This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakeland.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking.
And Doug Johnson in the bird chair.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming to the speed of a mathematical genius, figuring out how best to take down a rabid Etten in 2 turns. Today's edition is brought to you by all of our friends at Patreon, the men and women, boys and girls who help us keep the lights on every single episode. Today, I would like to thank in particular Marcus Bone, Gary Boyce, Christopher Brady, David Bresson, and Mal Brick. I'm Geekly McNernigan, your host. Today our panelists are Russ, Wiley Wyvern Wakeland, and the artistic brain behind Table Wars, the master of the fat mat, Doug Jackalware Johnson. Let's begin. Issue number 1. There are countless ways to track the movement, ranges, and areas of effect in games that utilize a miniaturized environment. Whether you're using a tape measure, a whippy stick, or some sort of environmental division scheme, you have to know where you are, what you can hurt, and what can hurt you. Question. If a hexagon is seen as one of the ideal shapes for such divisions of location due to a relatively small perimeter compared to its area, what shape is considered to be the opposite with a larger perimeter to a smaller area? Rhombus Russ.
I'm going to go with parallelogram.
Gygon Doug.
Triangle.
Ooh, that makes Russ wrong! And Doug correct. A triangle. Just think about trying to get your armies into position when you've only got 2 directions you can move. Oh, Russell, aren't you an engineer? Issue number 2. A deck building game is a card game that uses building a deck as a primary focus of the gameplay. As the players' decks expand, they are provided with more abilities, advantages, and resources. Typically, the cards provide a type of game currency which allows players to buy more cards to add to their decks. The concept of deck building can be used in nearly any genre of game, although it would seem to lend itself particularly to a role-playing environment. Question. If real life was a deck building game, how many cards would be in Charlie Sheen's deck, and what would be the most powerful card he possessed? Thunderstone Russ.
Ooh, do you know who I am? 3.
Dominion Doug.
Tiger's Blood, 1 card.
Ooh, that's pretty
This is frightening. Charlie Sheen played the anger management card 4 years ago, which drained his deck, leaving only 1. Tiger Blood.
Oh my God!
2 in a row.
What?
I'm going to have to start faking the answers.
This
clearly.
is weird.
Issue number 3. Each fall, we look forward to the return of old favorites and exciting new shows that might bring a fresh infusion of excitement and wonder to our dull and empty lives. Question. What is the most surprising return this fall of 2017? Rush Hour Russ.
I don't know. I think all the shows that came back are pretty good.
A non-answer. Don't, Doug.
It was supposed to be the most surprising, correct?
Yeah.
The most surprising.
Oh, he's trying.
I don't know.
He's trying.
And sorry, wrong! That is unfortunately correct and after the buzzer. After 11 years,
3 in a row.
the return of Will and Grace has to be the strangest and most unanticipated return to network television in a generation.
What?
It didn't even have a strange Easter egg of pointing to it, such as Twin Peaks. Issue number 4. Mathematics, from the Greek mathema, knowledge, study, and learning, often shortened to maths or math, is the study of topics such as quantity and numbers, structure, space, and change. There is a range of views among mathematicians and philosophers as to the exact scope and definition of mathematics, and also a range of views on how much fun math can be in a game. Question. List the operations that would be an acceptable framework for a fun and exciting dungeon crawling game. Rational number, Russ.
Algebraic descent.
Derivative of function, Doug.
Geometry. 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet.
Sadly, I'm looking for operations, which makes both of you wrong on the face. I'm thinking addition of victory points and subtraction of the enemy from the field. Anything else, and you're playing with Dragonfire. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by
Battle Foam, protecting your army so you don't have to.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
Hello.
Hey, and welcome.
Spike.
Exactly, and welcome to episode 221, Craig.
221 doesn't sound so special.
The
221.
It
It's
is
getting old hat now.
Yeah, the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakeland.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Doug Johnson.
Hey, Doug!
Johnson!
Doug, it's great to have you back on the show. Doug, of course, one of the two men behind Tableware, right? Home of the famed Fat Matt and other awesome...
He's the, what, are you the left brain or the right brain of Fat Matt? I always get them mixed up.
Yeah, I get them mixed up, too. I'm a left-handed, right-braining artist, I guess.
Okay. There you go.
There you go.
Very good. So, Doug, what is your primary function over there at Tableware?
My primary function is creative director. I get to invent all the cool stuff.
That sounds like the fun job. So that's awesome.
It is the fun job. But you know what? Todd loves his spreadsheets, so it's just,
Right. He's a
that
nerd.
sounds like
He's
a
math
match
guy.
made in heaven.
Exactly. Someone's got to do the books.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
awesome. So since we've got Doug here back on the show, first of all, it was great to see you and Todd at Gen Con. I had a great time hanging out with you guys.
Yep.
And so
super fun.
Kind of rallied them up, got them back on the show here. We thought it'd be great to catch up what's Tableware up to. We'll talk more about that later. And then also kind of chat a little bit about what we've been playing, and then also talk about Dragonfire, a little bit later.
You can talk about Dragon Lord if you want.
Sure, we'll throw some lords in there too. But before we get to all that, Craig, you and I chatted a little bit in Dunkin' Donuts not too long ago. Do you remember what we talked about?
We did, Russ. We were talking about the upcoming fall season on TV.
We were.
And what we thought about it, what we were looking forward to, and what we couldn't care less about.
Right.
Like Will and Grace.
Yes. Well, right. And one of the shows I mentioned to you, and I think you'll talk about it later, was Stand Against Evil, which was
yes, indeed, you did. You did mention that.
So if you want to hear about that and other shows that we're excited about, head on over to our Patreon page. And Craig, if someone wanted to follow us on the Lost Chapters and get involved in that and listen to yet more of us rambling on about random geeky goodness, what would they do?
Yep. Well, the easiest way, Russ, is to go to the d6generation.com and look at the Patreon logo on the right-hand side. Click on it. It'll bring us right to your page. It will bring you right to our Patreon page, which will explain how Patreon works. And basically, it's like a little tip jar. You become part of the show. You help us out and help us keep the show on the air, keep the lights on, keep us going to where we need to go to cover all the stuff that we're covering, meeting all the people that we bring onto the show and such not. And in exchange for that, if you're tipping $2 or more an episode, you have access to the entire library of the Lost Chapters.
Exactly right. So we thank all our patrons for making that happen. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And that's the way we do a little bit of extra content for you there. So Craig, what's the time now for?
Right now it's time for Achievements in Gaming.
Indeed. And, of course, achievements brought to us by all of our fine friends over at Patreon. So this is part of the show we chat about what we've been playing lately. First, we'll talk about, analog games you play at a table. Doug, what have you been playing lately?
Well, at the table, I've been getting ready to start up our Masters League here for 40K, which has been taking up a lot of my time, not including the new venture.
So is your local community really getting excited about 8th edition? Did 40K ever leave and come back, or has it been strong for a long time there now?
It's been strong. We see a lot of new guys coming in.
Yep.
Some guys kind of, just kind of waiting to see how things are going to go. Some of the consistent players are stepping back, checking things out. But we're also bringing in a lot of new guys for our Masters with our 30 guys that signed up this Masters League. 11 of them are new players to the Masters, which is pretty exciting.
That's awesome.
which is really fun. And the Masters is a local league where we divide everybody in divisions. We usually meet at like one of the microbreweries here, and I make up some kind of wonky game. Today or this time for division picks, we did tic-tac-toe beanbag tossing to see who's in what division. And we go whoever got the highest in the last Masters goes first. Then all the new guys go, and all the guys that were at the bottom go to try to dodge those guys. So basically, you throw two beanbags, and it gets in two divisions, so you can pick which division you want.
I love it.
Nice.
So we kind of have this party. It's basically our division draft plus our awards for the last Masters, and we had a raffle this time. So we had over like $1,000 worth of prize support that we raffled off and gave away during this Masters for 30 guys.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Such a great feeling.
And the guy that walked away with the most stuff went, I think, 1-7 in the Masters.
Oh, really?
Wow, that's awesome. So it's mostly it's not about winning that much. It's mostly about just getting together and playing.
It's about everything, really.
Yeah.
I mean, we did whoever gets, everybody gets put in their divisions. And then after those divisions, the top half go to the gold bracket playoffs and the bottom half go to the silver bracket playoffs. The winners of each of those gets prizes. The gold bracket, winner gets $400 cash.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The silver bracket gets $150 plus store credit, plus they got a fat mat. So there's a bunch of stuff, and then a bunch of people donate to we had War Gamma donate to us, a bunch of awesome models, these big giant bugs, stuff like that. So throughout the league, you're posting up pictures of your battles and forging a little bit of a narrative with your battle reports on there, and that gets you raffle tickets. So at the end, during the awards, everybody gets raffle tickets who help build the Masters experience, and then we do a drawing and hang out at the brewery and have fun. It's super fun because it kind of gives a little bit of that tournament feel, but not really. And the nice thing is you get to finish all your games. I throw a barbecue at my house and bring over guys in my division, and we play on the weekend at least once a Masters. So it's really kind of bringing everybody together for the social aspect of the game again, not just the competitive part.
That's awesome. I love the idea of raffle tickets for the people who do, for each time you take pictures of your matches and kind of write a little fluff about it or whatever. I think that's fantastic. I love the idea of promoting just the the narrative of the game as much as the competitiveness of the game. That's cool.
Yeah, we actually threw in a new award this Masters. We're starting one called the Remembrancer. So you have to play a single faction the whole Masters, forging a narrative with all of your battle reports and all your photos, fully painted. So, for example, if you're going to take Salamanders as your faction, you could only ever play just Salamanders. You can't throw in an Assassin or an Inquisitor or anything like that.
Cool.
It's pure. Demons, you have to pick a god and stick to that. So only Nurgle demons.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Only
thematic.
Khorne.
That's really cool. I love it. That's really cool.
I'm surprised. Over a third of the guys say they're going for that. So that's 10 out of 30 guys are going for the Remembrancer, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. That's
great. I love that you guys are promoting all aspects of the hobby. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, how long have you guys been running this league for?
3 years. This will be your third year.
Nice.
So
nice. That's a longevity.
They go long. It goes long because it's basically you have 2 weeks to play one game.
Right.
So for this Masters, we have 4 divisions. So it's 8 people in each division. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. I got to do my math. Orc math. Hard. So that's 7 games in your division. And then you get split off in the playoffs. So everybody gets 8 games guaranteed.
Yeah.
And 7 in division, and then your first playoff game. The nice thing is you also get to change your list. So everybody's primary faction, and you can tool your list towards them.
Right.
So it can get tough, and you definitely have people that list build wrong. Like, oh yeah, Ted always brings flyers. I'm going to bring a bunch of anti-flyer. Oh, Ted didn't bring any flyers against me. Oh no. It happens a lot. It's really fun. And then in the semifinals and finals, it's a best of 3, and you can change your list every game of that finals.
That's awesome.
Almost like.
What's been
it's super fun.
What's been the reception of 8th edition? Everybody loving it, or is it going over well?
it's going over well. 8th edition, my opinion is it's super fun and super brutal.
Yeah.
It's not forgiving at all. It can be tough. I mean, if you make a mistake, a big mistake can cost you dearly. I mean, it can be really those first couple turns with a lot of shooting. It can be tough, but it's still, I like what they're doing. I like the direction they're going. Hopefully they can, tweak some stuff for competitive play, but for casual play and league play, it's really fun.
Nice.
And I'm having a blast with it. So our weekly league that I'm getting ready to go to now is finishing up its 6th week. This will be our second 8th edition league. So we do 6 weeks, 6-week league every Wednesday. Mm-hmm. That's completely different than the Masters.
Right.
And so we have a huge community down here, if you couldn't guess. But
that's awesome.
That's awesome.
With our next 8th edition one for that league, I'm going to do hidden lists. So if somebody's driving around a Land Raider or a Rhino or a Razorback, you don't know if something's inside until it jumps out or you blow it up.
Right.
Stuff like that. So stuff in reserve, you don't know what's there until it comes on the board. Kind of that the secret list kind of thing. It's super fun. But, it's the kind of 8th definitely lends itself to doing these, crazy missions, fun, missions. If you just understand that, it can be really one-sided as far as, the guy could, have just a list that wipes you out. But it's fun to know, okay, I'm playing on my back foot here. What can I do? How can I deal with this? So I really enjoy it.
That's very cool. That's awesome. Well, Craig, how about yourself? What have you been playing lately?
Let's see. What have I been playing lately? I did some Santorini, the game that I got at Gen Con for Reese. Still, it's a fun, simple game. And Rafe's birthday was this past weekend, and he usually does a big moped day, and then they play RPGs at night. And I haven't been able to go for years. I could go this time, and the moped place went out of business.
Oh, dear.
So guess what they decided to play instead of mopeding, Russ?
Well, I know the answer, so I can't really say it.
Agricola!
Agricola? Well,
yes.
Did you enjoy yourself?
I didn't go. I told Rafe that they could have a UA fest in the morning, and I would show up after lunch. And we also, Russ, did our very first, or my very first, escape room.
What'd you think?
Had a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, those are fun.
Yeah, there were 9 of us.
Yeah.
And it was a really good time. We did it. We got right in under the wire. We solved the final puzzle and opened the final lock, probably with just like a second or two on the clock. Mm-hmm. So it was very dramatic. And that was a lot of fun. And then after that, we went back to the big Renta Business Center that Rafe had rented for the day, and we played Scythe, which I know you've played.
I have.
And I know it's seen some serious play in our group, but I had not had a chance to play it, and I really enjoyed it.
It's a good game. Now I'm surprised it's got a lot of Euro-y to it there.
It's very Euro. It's in fact the game we played was entirely Euro. There was almost no combat at all.
And you liked it.
In fact, there was no combat at all. Well, I liked it because let's see. I came in second place to Christian.
Oh, yes. Well,
but Christian doesn't really count as a normal mortal, as you know. So if you come in second place to Christian, it's kind of like winning the game. So no, I enjoyed the fact that I was trying. The replayability is insane. The fact that the factions are going to be different every time. The fact that your strengths and weaknesses are going to shift, and you have to adjust and adapt to that. And then the fact that because you're not, every faction doesn't play the same every game because of that second half of the card that's random. You're going to be like just trying to build engines and get yourself try to figure out first, puzzle out what the strengths of your faction are going to be, and then play to those.
Right.
While at the same time dealing with these mission cards that are letting you earn victory points also, but may be working against your strengths. So I thought it was fun. I think the world is great, and we should definitely talk more about that on an upcoming show.
We should, and the components are off the charts. They're just fantastic.
The components are insane.
Now, did you guys have the new expansion with the flying stuff?
No, that has not come out yet. No. We were playing Adam's copy. Adam has almost everything updated. Christian has everything updated and was trying to sell Adam his secondary set of upgrades.
Right.
But neither of them had the flying ships, which I'm just as happy to have not had to deal with because I was already dealing with all the other new stuff.
A lot of stuff, yeah, right.
Yeah. And then we had a guest speaker come to school this week that messed up the schedules for a whole day, so I only had a couple kids, or more like 3 or 4 kids in each class. So we played Code Names, which is always a great
Love that game.
draw for great for the kids love it. The principal walks in and it looks like we're doing work, and what more could you ask for?
Very cool.
And so that was me. What about you, Russ?
Well, continuing my D&D 5th edition campaign with my niece, nephew, daughters, and brother. And
awesome.
We just transitioned from, long-time listeners will know, we finally finished the Horde of the Dragon Queen, and now we are moving on to Rise of Tiamat. And so last episode, we got through the transition period, which is, for anybody who's played these two adventures, there isn't really a good transition between the two sections. It's sort of something got lost in the translation there, so I made one up, it was fine. But then the opening scene, this is not really a spoiler, but the opening scene of Rise of Tiamat was challenging because basically the heroes now are like, if you play through the first adventure, around 8th or 9th level. So you're all really pretty well-known heroes, and so there's this council forming, and this all takes place on the Sword Coast, right? So there's a council forming in Waterdeep, and the council wants to meet about the rising threat of dragons, right? So the players are summoned to the council because they're famous now, and they want. This is all in the main book. So you have this challenge where you're going to role play a really pretty important scene with the players in front of this large council. In my head, I'm imagining like Lord of the Rings at Rivendell, right? And like trying to explain why these are the guys that should be entrusted with trying to save the land from Tiamat coming and all these things. And you got like 8 council members. And so as a DM, you got to kind of role play 8 council members.
Oh, I heard about your brother was very impressed with this.
So what I decided to do, I wasn't sure how to do this exactly. So I went online and I found some random art to represent the 8 different council members. And I put them up on a PowerPoint slide behind me, projected on a big TV. So the players all see this TV behind me. And as the players are telling what they did in their story, I'm putting little emojis next to each of the characters on the council to give the players feedback, like the facial recognition, the facial feedback you get, the body language you'd get if you were at a real meeting, and saying things like, so I think what we should do is this, and some people in the meeting might be smiling and nodding, and some people might be frowning and looking away. And so, like, in the earlier part of the campaign, there were all these decisions that could have been made. That players didn't know these were important decisions, but it turns out now they were. And so you're trying to, like, so I'm asking the players to go through and describe what happened at various ports in the first half of the campaign, and then I'm doing the reactions, and the players love it. They're like, why is the dwarf so grumpy? And they're like, how can we make the dwarf happy? And they're starting to figure out, like, it was really pretty cool, and they got really into it, and it was, awesome. The only downside to it was the method I was using to get the emojis on required me to pause as a DM once in a while to kind of bring the technology up. So I got to figure out a way to make it faster, but they were really getting into it, and now the next thing is I'm going to create all these little side events that aren't in the book about how the different council members are going to try to lobby different party members, like the Druidic orders. That's all about nature and balance is going to try to lobby the party's Druid to work for them and all that crazy political intrigue. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's definitely a different kind of module. This is not your classic, like, the module's not like 80 pages of the various traps and tricks in a dungeon. It's really the political intrigue and complexity that's going on in the world as Tiamat's rising and the different factions. And like I had... there's all these different reasons that people don't want to stop Tiamat from rising, but they're not all good guys. Like, the party this is not really in the main book, I had the party petitioned by devils trying to stop them. It's like, but there's a paladin in the party, but there's also a tiefling who's a warlock and has got alliances with demons that the paladin doesn't know about. So, like, there's all this, like, she's like, well, maybe we should hook up with the devils. I mean, they could be pretty powerful allies. And the wizard's like, we are not signing any paperwork involving devils. I'm just drawing a line. So it was pretty good times, and I thought they seemed to enjoy the PowerPoint trick with the council. So
your brother loved it.
I'm glad it worked out.
That sounds awesome.
It was fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a good campaign. It gets a bad rap, I think, because it's very unconventional and it doesn't really save the DM time. It really gives you a lot of great ideas, but you still got to do a crap ton of prep work. Unlike a lot of modules, you can just pull them out and play and not really worry too much about it. So I like it, but it's more of a setting than it is an actual by-the-book campaign. So also played 2 games of actually 3 games now of Dragonfire. More about that later. Played Jeff Finkelstein's new game, Pit Crew.
Oh, I forgot 2 games of Dragonfire.
Yes.
Called it.
Yes.
Sorry.
So Pit Crew.
Yeah, how was that?
It's pretty neat. It's a new game from Jeff Finkelstein. It's a stronghold game. It's a small little box. The theme of this game is that you are, the unsung heroes of racing. So instead of the driver of the race car, you guys are actually playing the crew that's changing the tires, refilling the tank, tweaking the engine when the car pits in the racetrack. And Jeff's getting pretty good at this. So this game has got, you almost always team up. So unless you're one-on-one, you're either in 2 teams of 2 or 3 teams of 2 or teams of 3. And each team is literally playing parts of the pit crew, and you play in real time. So instead of like me taking a turn and you taking a turn, Craig, each team's got a car card in front of them. It shows the top view of a car with the 4 tires and where the gas tank should be. And then each player on a crew's got a little hand of cards, and you're trying to quickly find the right combination of cards that are required, and there are little numbers on them that require certain kinds of math to like change a tire. So to change a tire, there might be a 5 next to it. So you got to play a card that's either 1 higher or 1 lower. And then once I play the 4, Craig, you could play a card that's a 3 or a 5. And you're trying to get a series of cards quickly on one tire to get that locked in. And then you're trying to get a series of cards on the other tire. Meanwhile, the other team is doing the same thing. And then whichever team can complete their car first can grab some dice out of the middle of the pool and start rolling. And every time they roll a 6, they can move their car token 1 more spot on the track. And you're out of the pit and getting ahead. But after the second team fixes their car, they can yell stop, and you stop rolling the dice, and now both sides check their cars. And for each error made, the car that hasn't, the car that the didn't make the error advances on them. So it's kind of this interesting little like madhouse game, not unlike Dice Duel. But then there's a pause point where you check for your correctness, and you play catch up. It's a pretty neat game. It does capture the theme pretty well. Artwork's great. It's a fun little game. So if you're into racing and pit crews and you want a different kind of game, the only critique my family had is it's not relaxing at all. It's very much like Dice Duel, where you just and they're like, oh god, I need a break, Right. But it does play super fast also, which is nice.
Cool. Sounds like fun.
Continuing our Seafall campaign. So we got two more games of Seafall in last time. This is the legacy game where it changes as you go. You're all playing these different sort of sailing nations that go around, and you're putting stickers on the board to add new islands to it. And I have to say, I really don't want to spoil this, but there's this cool new thing that totally changes the game. I can't spoil it. But I have to say, if you don't get to this cool thing, the game just goes to a whole new level when this comes out. So I'm loving that part.
I think this is the 3rd time you've said that.
I know. Seafall's. I like Seafall. I know people don't like it. I love it. Also, I did tweet this. So Tom Vassell of the Dice Tower is definitely not a Seafall fan. So one of the cards in the game
I was wondering if that tweet was ironic.
It was. Well, one of the cards in the game looks a lot like Tom, so we may have drawn some artwork on it to make it look more like Tom. And you can name the different cards. And so we did name it Tom the Vassal, and it's now in our deck. So it had to be done. Also played Bunny Kingdoms for the first time. So I picked up Bunny Kingdoms at Gen Con. Played it there with my family. Played it at home several times with my family. Still loving it. Managed to bring it to game night and played it with a bunch of adult serious gamers, and we had a blast. And this is a game, again, where you're playing with little tiny plastic bunnies that go into little tiny carrot-shaped castles with little cute little bunny artwork on it. It is just a really, really, really good, I guess, area control and multiplication game is basically what it is.
Wow, it's just math to the walls tonight.
You have to remember that multiplication does fit into the bunny theme when you think about it a little harder.
That's true,
And last but not least, I also played another Catalyst Game Lab new game, Masters of Orion Conquest. So this is based on the video game of the same name, famously known as Mu, Masters of Orion, the classic 4X Take Over the Galaxy game. And this is a card game, a card drafting game, 2-player drafting game, very similar with the same cool theme. But what I like about it is, in addition to drawing cards to do stuff, you're also going to take control of these hexagonal worlds, which is really just adds flavor to it. It makes it feel very much like Masters of Orion, or a little bit of like Race for the Galaxy Light. So I really like in Masters of Orion. It's a fun one too. So that's all my games played. But what about modeling? John, did you get any modeling in? Painting, anything?
I got some painting in. I did some reavers for my 40K, and I'm cleaning all of my pirates for Blood and Plunder.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
So when I'm sitting there and we're watching Defenders, I'm cleaning pirates.
So Doug, which pirate?
Got to get those guys painted.
Which faction have you chosen a specific pirate like leader and faction you're going to go with?
Nope, I have them all. I'm just trying to build them all right now.
Why choose when you don't have to, right? Why not just own them all?
I couldn't decide. I loved them all. I'm like, all right, I'll just get them all.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Blood and Plunder is such a great game. That's a really good.
So much fun.
It really is, and the models are fantastic. They're really fun to paint. Craig, how about yourself?
Well, I have finished my Nurgle army, everything that's out to date, with, of course, their Primarch coming out next week, or maybe this weekend. I don't know. I have yet to decide if I'm going to. Yeah, I don't know if considering the size games that we usually play around here, I'm not sure if I'm going to shell out $140 for one model, but it looks beautiful. Yeah. So I don't know. But I love the way I've got the Forge World Greater Demon. I have the Forge World Plague Hulk all done, and they're all gross, and their wounds are all glistening because I used a gloss coat on all of their gross, disgusting wounds. Nice. And yeah, I'm just super. I mean, 46 Plague Walkers. That's a lot of zombie guys, just like on your table just to look at. I haven't been able to play with all of them yet, but I'm looking forward to it. That's awesome. And then having finished that, and that only leaves me with my Space Wolf stuff to catch up on the 8th edition meta, so to speak. I decided to take a little break from 40K, and I am in the process of painting 32 more skeletons for my Rune Wars army.
That's awesome. I can't wait. I got more work to do. Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
32. That's a lot.
Have you tried the new... did I get you the new leader? Did you get the new leader?
No, you did not get the new leader, but I am planning on picking him up this weekend.
He's awesome. He's like riding a wave or something, right? He's like...
Yeah, I've heard some crazy things about him.
Uh-oh.
So that's me, Russ. What about you?
Well, speaking of Rune Wars, I too have been working on Rune Wars, guys. I have built... So at Gen Con, I picked up 2 boxes of the new elves, the elf starter sets, and I have assembled all of them now. And I have started priming some of them. So I've painted or primed the big tree dudes, the big tree things that shoot laser beams out of their foreheads or whatever, and also the leader. So I'm going to get to work on them. But I also got distracted because I also picked up some other new models at Gen Con. So in the Privateer press booth, I grabbed a couple of the Gen Con exclusives, including the new... so every year, Privateer does sort of a little model that matches the artwork on the Ram shirt. And this year, the artwork was Signar, and it was a... I don't remember what they called her, but it's a female... She's meant to be played in place of the Squire. So for those of you who know Signar, Squire is actually a little robot that can attach to your caster and enhances their focus abilities. But she's meant to be played as that, but she looks to me like a Stormsmith. She's got this nice long staff, and she's wearing what looks like sort of like semi-insulated sort of armor. She's got the little electro loads on her. So I'm actually going to field her as a Stormsmith. And plus it gives you a little bit of variety because all the Stormsmiths are these gray-haired old men. So I'm going to create... she's going to be that, and I'm trying to paint her to match her. I'm really having fun. She's got the super long ponytail, really cool sculpt. So I'm having fun with her, plus my Rune Wars elves. So that's what I'm going to keep mid busy.
Oh.
Doug, what about other geeky goodness, like reading any books, comic books, seen any good
You mentioned
movies?
the Defenders, I couldn't help but notice.
Yeah. Have you watched the Defenders?
Yeah, I'm watching that. We watched all those.
What'd you think of the Defenders?
Powered through them. Pretty good. I'm a huge Daredevil fan. I like Daredevil a lot in that one. I didn't get into Cage much or the Iron Fist much, but it was pretty good. I mean, it took 2 episodes to get them all together and get them working together.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm excited about the next season. We'll see what happens.
I feel like so I of all the individuals. So did you watch all the individual series or no?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So of all the individual series, I thought Iron Fist. I think generally I think I agree with most folks that Iron Fist was the weakest. And in the Defenders, Iron Fist was still the weakest. He came across as a whiny little punk. Yeah. But Jessica Jones stole the show. They gave her all the best lines, and I thought she was just flawless. And she really every scene that I thought involved Jessica was just the best. So I really thought
they were pretty good. Yeah, I agree.
And I liked Luke. And I loved, and to your point, I loved Daredevil. And I thought all the sidekicks were really well done. They didn't have a lot of screen time, but what time they did have was pretty good. So I really liked it. I thought it was great. And I don't know, Doug, you noticed this. And I know, Craig, you didn't really notice this when you watched it, but Nicole and I really caught the color thing they were doing with the show. Did you catch that, Doug? So like
the way they filmed it.
Yeah, like all the filters, and like literally there's a scene where each character has a color, right? It's very obvious in the intro graphics where there's a color for each character, but actually when they were showing each character, even when they were just on the screen by themselves, there'd be filters in place, and there'd also be background color in place. So like the area behind Jessica was always blue, and the area behind Iron Fist was always green, and Daredevil was always in reds, and Luke was always in yellows. And there's one scene where they get at a round table, they're all together, and if you watch when it pans around, behind each character is their color. And it was and as the characters got involved with each other, the colors would start to get merged more in their worlds. It was a neat, not so subtle but kind of subtle thing that I thought was pretty cool. I thought
it was subtle enough to go over my head.
Yeah. I thought it was neat. But anyway, what else you watching, Doug?
Well, let's see. I watched that Orville show.
Oh yeah, what did you think?
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, you hope you get so excited about a sci-fi show,
right?
And it just seemed like it kind of missed it a little bit, but we'll see. I mean, it was the first episode.
Are you a Seth MacFarlane fan?
I like Seth. He's all right. I mean, it's I'm not a huge fan, but I am.
No.
I like his stuff.
I think he's a much better writer than he is an actor, and I wish he would not feel the need to wedge himself into every project he writes. I think
I would have to agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good he's a good voiceover guy for cartoons where you got to be campy and over the top, but he just plays himself in every live action thing, and I find that annoying. That's just my take. I haven't seen Orville yet, mainly because of
I'm excited. That. I want to see Star Trek.
Yeah.
I don't have the access yet for Discovery.
They're making that hard. They're making that hard to get. I hope they can make that easier. But also, Doug, I want to ask you. You were talking to us off the air a little bit about some. Now we have a no-hate policy here on the show, but we can talk about disappointment. And one of my favorite iOS games is, in fact, Lords of Waterdeep. And you were just saying off the air, you were playing some Lords of Waterdeep on your tablet, and you were having some challenges. What happened?
Well,
you haven't played in a while, right?
I haven't played in a while. Yeah, it's been over a month.
Yeah, they changed the UI, and it's just unmanageable for me. I don't like it at all. It's kind of a bummer. We basically canceled our game, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
Like in the middle of it. But, yeah, so...
I'm surprised, because that's what I thought originally it was one of the better UIs. It looked really clean. It was easy to understand and use.
It was great.
Yeah,
I don't know why they needed to change it. They changed it to landscape, and then it's kind of tracking is really weird. And then very small, because I'm doing it on my iPhone 6 Plus.
Yeah.
So maybe it looks cool on a tablet, but on my phone it's unmanageable.
We were playing it on your phone, Russ.
We were. It was fine on the plane.
On the plane,
yeah, it was fine. Well, I'm sad because that's one of my go-to while traveling games. I'm sad about that.
Oh, I'm always in a game.
Yeah.
And now I'm not, which is a bummer.
That stinks. Well,
I hope they change it.
Yeah. Hopefully, from your lips to whoever they are's ears. I forget who did that.
Yeah. Just write them. If you don't like the UI, write them. Let them know. We'll change it.
We'll do a campaign.
I sent a message in.
All right. He did his part. Doug's done his part. All right. Well, Doug, we'll credit you then if they fix it.
Would you like to know more?
You're right. Would you like to know more? Cool. Craig, how about you, sir? What have you been playing and watching or watching?
What have I been
reading?
I have been doing some Minecraft because Reese all of a sudden came to me and said he wanted to build a house out of he's got all kinds of Minecraft books now.
Yeah, right.
And somehow he developed the ability to build things, and I wasn't looking. So he was like, "Daddy, I'm really trying to build this house, and I want to know if you can help me with the roof." And I'm like, "Oh, buddy, I don't know. I don't know anything about Minecraft, but I'll go look." Kid's got like a 3-story mansion built with like these huge pillars and a full basement, and the roof was a giant pain in the butt, I will admit. But I was so impressed and so excited that he had done all this on his own that we worked for like an hour and a half to build a giant multi-peaked roof for his house. And then that was a few days ago. And then the other day he was like, hey, Dad, you want to look and see what the house looks like now? And he put a freaking porch on it.
Nice.
It's like there's a wraparound deck with stone pillars holding it up. I'm like, geez, buddy, I wouldn't mind living in your house.
Yeah,
so that was
awesome.
fun.
Architecture training.
There you go. I'm finishing The Dark Tower. I am on book 7, The
Nice.
Dark Tower of the Dark Tower series.
Yes.
And all I can say is, oh, Stephen King.
Are you not enjoying the end?
Stephen King. It's just Stephen King. I'm enjoying it, but it's just Stephen King. I'll leave it at that.
All right.
TV show, we already talked about the Defenders.
Yes.
I watched the entirety, of course it's only 6 episodes, of The Tick.
Me too. I got through the whole thing.
You did? Did you?
I did.
Doug, have you watched The Tick at all?
I've watched the first episode.
All right. What did you think?
I need to watch more episodes.
Yeah. I will say that I'm going to spend my disappointment card on The Tick, I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I love the wacky sense of humor, but I feel like they wanted to be both wackier and darker and more serious all at the same time.
Yes.
And so there's a whole layered subplot that I believe, after asking a million people, is new to The Tick.
Yes.
This whole concept of is he or isn't he?
Yes.
That really muddies the waters for me for the humor. You know?
It does.
And I'm like, oh, is it just wacky fun, or oh, is it like a sad commentary on mental illness? I don't know.
Right.
And so that does resolve. I won't tell you how, but that sort of not so much resolve, but it kind of gets out of the way in the second 3 episodes.
Yes. Yeah.
But by that time, the tone had been set for me, and I was not enjoying it as much as I know I would have if they had just committed to the humor like I wish they had.
Yeah, so Amazon has both the new Tick and the original Tick. And I went back and started watching the original Tick, and I like the original one better.
Way better.
The original live action.
Yeah, the original live action is way better. So the new one, I enjoyed it. I didn't dislike it, but you're right. And the second 3 were much better because I just sort of forgot some of the subtext they were trying to weave into the first 3. It was almost like in the second half they're like, I know, let's put the villain back in the show. And then it got better. And then it got pretty good. And I think if they can, I'm really more interested in him. And the actor that plays the villain and the villain's character is really good.
Right. He's from the first season of Preacher.
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that whole thing is
Among other things.
is a great situation. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the second season, but I hope it makes it because I think, Doug, I was almost like you where the first 2 episodes were so kind of, I don't know, off-putting, but just different than I expected that I almost gave up. But I stuck with it because Tick.
Yeah. If they get a second season,
right,
and they decide to continue on in the vein of the second half of the first season, I'll definitely give it a shot. But I'll wait to hear what other people say first.
Yeah, agreed.
That was it, because it became more of an annoyance. I was like, I know I have to finish. It's only 6 episodes. I don't think I would have finished if it was more than 6 episodes and they didn't sort of partially phase that whole subplot out. I don't think I would have finished.
Yeah. Cool.
And and then Russ, I blame this on you. Stan Against Evil.
Yeah, what'd you think? Was I wrong?
We talked about it. It was it's weird. I like all of the performances, and it's wacky. It's not making the mistake of the Tick and trying to be serious. It's definitely tongue-in-cheek wacky. I did have my first horrible experience as a father concerning horror on TV, though. Because I had already watched most of the season. I knew it was just wacky fun. And Reese had like 10 more minutes before bed, and he was finishing up something, and I was like, hey, buddy, I'm just going to watch this. And a dog went insane and started to eat somebody.
Yeah, don't do no.
Reese just very calmly said, Daddy, could we watch something else?
Yeah.
I was like, yes, buddy, we can. And I was like, oh, my God. All I could remember is the trauma I suffered with Space 1999.
Yeah.
And the episode where the I don't know. I didn't even know how it happened, but a couple people got rendered down to skeletons, and I've never forgotten the image. So I did my best. I spent like a 45-minute pep talk session.
Let's talk about unicorns and rainbows.
Yeah, exactly. Let's wash that out of your brain.
Right. Right.
But I have to say, obviously they've got a budget because in moments they have really cool special effects, but then in other moments it's almost like they're embracing the campy bad special effects of the original Army of Darkness era.
Yep.
And that I found that a little offsetting in my head.
Yeah, I think
other than that, I really liked the story. I loved the story. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the actors. The writing is funny, but that sort of the technical level of it seemed disjointed to me.
The Bobby Orr episode is still my favorite.
Yes, the Bobby Orr episode is awesome.
So real quick for my stuff, I finished Uncharted Lost Legacy, which is the latest Uncharted game. Really enjoyed it. I think the ladies did a great job and really takes the game in a great new direction. I thought that what makes Uncharted great is it's just a series of fast-paced sort of Indiana Jones style adventures. Original 4 were Nathan Drake, and this new one features spin-off characters from the original series, and their one-liners are still just as good, and the ending's fantastic. So highly recommend Uncharted Lost Legacy. For audiobooks, I'm in the middle of Craig's audiobook. Craig, I'm loving your plot and the story and the whole thing, and I'm about 3/4 of the way through that, so I'm looking forward to the ending, how that's going to end.
Thank you.
We talked about Defenders. I finished the latest season of Killjoys, which I loved. I loved this season. I thought it brought a lot of cool stuff together. Really, they found a budget because the space battles were great. But it's a freaking cliffhanger, so suck. But I can't wait for more.
Hey, at least they got renewed.
For 2 more, right? They got renewed for 2 more seasons, and that definitely will be the end. So that's here's your time left and tell your story, which I think is great. So they have plenty of time to sort of tell what they want to tell, which is great. I also finished the second season of Preacher, and I loved the second season of Preacher also. So Preacher is still nailing on all cylinders. Talk about dark humor. That show is just full of it. I can't even say it because it's a spoiler, but what happens to his, let's just say, the vampire's buddy that they hang out with, I'll just say it that way, is just so funny and great, and yet sad at the same time, but in ways that are done properly. Like, if you want to see, I would say that, The Tick is some examples of how to make missteps. We said Stand Against Evil does a great job, but still can't find its way occasionally. Preacher just nails it every time for me. I don't know what the combination is, but it's definitely got very, very serious dark moments. But then in the same scene, it goes for the new villain this year. Craig is the best. That guy, the head of the. Doug, are you watching this show?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God, you got to watch the Preacher. So it's in the second season now.
Okay.
Fantastic. Follows. There's no real way to describe the show without giving away spoilers. No. Just watch.
Without spending 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. So phew.
Cool.
Is that achievements?
That is achievements.
Excellent. I think we're achieved out. Woo, man.
The D6 generation. Not as smart as Yoda, but not as dumb as Jar Jar Binks.
Wise, the announcer is. Hello.
Hey, welcome back, and now it's time for us to talk for a few minutes about our friends over at Battlefoam.
Yeah, the brand new Craig. I cannot wait. Okay, here's the thing.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I don't, strictly speaking, by the definition of the word need, I do not need the new hotness from Battlefoam that just released this week.
Oh yeah.
But it's up for pre-order. But OMG, have you seen the new Privateer Press backpack from Battlefoam?
Oh, I know you're a big fan of backpacks.
But look at this thing. I mean, it's got this little miniature pod on the top.
It's giant.
It's got a side zipper thing to pop open and book rule. I mean, oh man, this thing is talk about a man crush. I want that bad boy. Look at that thing. It's just a thing of beauty. And again, like all their products, high quality. I mean, even just looking at pictures of this backpack, you can just tell this thing is going to stand up to just the rigors of gamer travel. Let's just put it that way.
Travel, indeed. Yeah.
Look at the webbing on the side and just the stitching and the little mini pod. I
love the little mini pod at the top.
I know, right? That's for all your little gear. This bad boy is so sweet. So, but again, and it's not just, I mean, I'm geeking out over this Privateer Press thing, but quite frankly, they have a great selection of foam bags for any occasion. Obviously, the licensed bag for pretty much every miniature gaming system out there. So, if you're a fanboy of a game system, it's good odds that Battle Foam is too, and they've got the bag for you on that front, right, Craig?
Yeah, absolutely. And these are accessories being designed by gamers. Okay, right. So they you can tell just when you're looking at the different products that these are being designed by people who see a problem, like, I need to get this army from point A to point B and get it past the gorilla at baggage check, for instance. And then they're doing it. But they're also, what else do you want to? You want a cup holder? Oh, this one's got a cup holder. You want a place for your tablet? This one's got a place for your tablet. It's just, in my opinion, good design comes up with the stuff you need before you realize you need it. And that's definitely something that Battle Foam does in all of its transportation technology.
Oh, yeah. I mean, these now, Craig, they've also started adding their little boxes that pop in there to hold all your tokens in their bags now too. So it's kind of crazy. I mean,
yes.
The level of detail, and it's not just for miniature gamers. I mean, they have this stuff now for board gamers as well. And more and more, if you're backing a Kickstarter and it's going to come with a gajillion models in it, and there's no way you're going to fit them all into any kind of box. Again, go to battlefoam.com because they probably already have the foam custom cut out. And if they don't, you can create your own stuff right in their tray creator. So pretty much what you need is got your thing there over at battlefoam.com. So head on over, check out General Baggy over there at battlefoam.com.
Hooah!
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Ep.
Seriously, Wakeland? I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap.
Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey everyone, and welcome to another App of the Ep. This time around, I'm going to bring back one I've already reviewed, kind of. So, a while ago, I talked about a game that I really enjoyed called Ticket to Earth. And this is sort of like a little sort of sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, well, I don't know if it's post-apocalyptic because you're not really on Earth, but game. It's got a really great driving story. And it's got a really interesting gameplay mechanics where when you're in combat, you have to sort of trace these movement patterns on a grid and try to match the icons. The combat's very tactical, but what I really like about the game is the art style as well as the story, as well as the characters, and the combat system is really cool. And the variety of monsters gets interesting because I think I may have mentioned it's pretty short. I finished the first chapter and the game ends. However, the second chapter just came out, so I grabbed that as well, and it's fantastic. It adds another whole set of characters to the game. It continues the main story. It was kind of a cliffhanger, and it starts adding a little more depth to the monsters you fight as well. So a lot of new monsters, so they do some sort of different things that surprise you. It's just you can tell the craft that goes into this game. So really enjoying it again, really, really pleased with the second chapter. I'll report back in the future on how long it is. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm really enjoying it. It's a great, great game for when you're on a plane ride and you're kind of stuck there, nothing better to do. It's a great way to spend the time. You really get lost in the story and lost in the gameplay before you know it. Several hours have gone by. So a great mobile game app. I love it on my iOS device, and that is Ticket to Earth.
Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the Ep, a segment in which,
hey, less of that, more just getting on with the show.
Seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, welcome back. And since we have Doug here on the show, Craig,
Yes.
I feel like we need to get an update on what is going on in Tableware. Now, Doug, you've been rapidly promoting Tableware all summer long, I would imagine. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yes.
There was some foaming at the mouth at Gen Con.
At various conventions. Now, what do you guys think is an essential convention for Tableware? Like, how busy is your summer convention schedule?
Oh, my summer convention schedule is pretty hectic. Throw in me doing, new creative stuff on top of that. It gets pretty wild. And for some reason, every summer for like the last 3 has been like that for me. I haven't got to enjoy my San Diego summers for quite a while now.
That's a shame, because although, is summer in San Diego any different than winter in San Diego? Let's be honest.
It's a little warmer in the summer. So actually, when a nice sunny day in the winter is actually I actually like that more. Unless I'm going to go to the beach and actually jump in the waves. But I think I only did that twice this summer, which is crazy. But
so how many cons do you guys typically go to in a year? Like, where do you try to get to?
We go to. We go to in the summertime. We had Nova open. We have Gen Con. Those are our 2 big ones. We have Kingdom Con. That's before the summertime.
Yeah.
So not too big of a schedule this year. With our new Kickstarter that we're getting ready to come out with. After that's out, I think we're going to be hitting quite a few more next season. So I don't know if there's a con season, but it seems to kind of all be blending together for me now.
Yeah, I think it used to be seasonal. It feels like it's year round now almost. I feel like every season there's a good.
Well, we know there's at least one every quarter that we do.
Oh yeah, I know, right? So you guys, I know you're hinting at a new Kickstarter coming. We'll talk about that in a second. And I know you guys have constantly working to keep it fresh. And as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, of course, Tableware makes the great neoprene mats that war gamers across the globe have fallen in love with.
Fat mat.
Yeah, exactly. So what have you seen change since you guys got into the market? And we talked about this the last time you were on the show, but what have you seen changing lately? Like, I know you guys are iterating to make things even different, but how is the competition? Are they starting to catch up, or is how people use mats changing, or do you think it's pretty much the way it's always been? Like, what's changing lately?
Well, there's certain things I've noticed, and I think maybe I should throw this back to you guys. I mean, I see in like the last year, a lot of new games are coming out with mats instead of boards as their surfaces. So a lot of those games that you would have typically seen as a board game, on the kitchen table with the family, are now, instead of a board, they're using a mat, a rollout mat. So should I credit that towards the fat mat? I don't know. Maybe people are just realizing, it's tough to say, but that's definitely something I've noticed in this, I'd say at least the past year, if not almost 2 years now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Not only are they, sometimes they're included, but almost always there's a neoprene option, right, to bling out your game, either by the manufacturer of the game or a third party comes out with it almost immediately if the game proves popular, right?
Absolutely, especially if it's a game that's, some of those deck building games that maybe didn't come out with their own mat initially. Now you'll start to see, third parties doing something for them.
So what's kind of kicked in to cause you guys to really think about how you can iterate on your design?
How do you keep it fresh?
Yeah, exactly. How do you keep Tableware the premier, neoprene?
The innovator.
Right.
Keep playing games. I mean, I'm a gamer at heart. I'm such a nerd, and if the one thing that Tableware has done for me personally is it's given me that avenue to kind of see some of the things I'd love to see out there. Giving me the ability to do that, and if it's something that I feel like my friends would be interested in, or other people be interested, I'm happy to make it happen. And I enjoy it. I enjoy filling those gaps of that third party support. I love these games. I'm a super fan that likes helping out and doing cool things for the games we all know and love.
I think it's pretty obvious, especially when I feel like it's Tableware is almost first to market with a new size mat. So when a game comes out, it seems like a lot of miniature games in particular lately are starting to experiment with different non-standard table sizes, right? So like for a long time it was 4x6, 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 and now people are experimenting the last few years with different sizes. And it seems like you guys are always right there with you've already gone to market with the 3x6, right? And the 3x3 and all the other different sizes that are now becoming more common, which I think is fantastic. Have you seen the demand for the 3x3? The smaller surfaces becoming more popular in your line?
I do, and we definitely see it in the sales too. It's just a more convenient game surface for the kitchen table, or people that don't have a lot of game space at their house. There's more there's more games that I think are focusing on those smaller skirmish types, so they can get into people's houses, because not everybody can throw down on a 6x4 every night when their buddies come over, or once a week.
Yeah, it's probably worth pointing out that there actually aren't any normally made tables that are 4 feet wide. Like, that's actually, no one has one of those in their house unless they're a gamer and they've got something custom made, or a particular a gaming table, right? So the 3 foot width is definitely a good idea, I think, if you're so these games designed for that. I can see why you'd want that. So Doug, Craig asked it earlier, what are you guys doing to keep it fresh? So what is the next big thing coming from Tableware?
Mm-hmm. The next big thing from Tableware is our new Kickstarter coming out, and that is the GEO mat, the Game Environment Overlay.
Game Environment Overlay, GEO. I like the acronym. Look at that. It's even got a working acronym there. I like it.
Isn't that fun?
So you showed us this. It's a Gen Con a little bit. What was the genesis for the idea of the Game Environment Overlay, or GEO mat?
Well, it really started because I'm a big role player, so I love my D&D, and we're playing 5th Ed.
Yeah.
But so many people kept wanting the grid on the fat mat, and as a role player, I wanted to do it. The problem is with when you get into neoprene and you're putting the images onto the mat, you're not going to get a precise grid because of shrinkage or stretching as it's being as the image is being put on it. And me, with maybe it's my OCD, maybe it's my precision or whatever, that really something I really get into, it didn't feel right for me to put it on the mat. So I started looking at other options, and I think the GEO mat's what I came up with. And the GEO mat is basically, it is a clear, I'm going to say plastic, but it's more of a PVC. It's our own unique blend of PVC, clear PVC, with a precise 1 inch by 1 inch grid on it. That's what we're starting with on the Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. And it lays over your fat mat, and you can write on it with both wax, pins, and wet erase, and they come off no problem. The grid's on the back side, on the bottom side. You're writing on the top side. You can do whatever you want. It's completely waterproof, of course, so spill proof and all that kind of fun stuff. But the nice thing is it goes over your fat mat. And another really exciting thing that I'm through all the play testing I did with it is you can print out 2D images to slide underneath the GEO mat, to be in between the GEO mat and the fat mat, so your DM can customize the environment.
Yeah, and you showed us this at a Gen Con. It was just brilliant. So this is this clear, I want to say laminate, but it's not really a laminate, but it looks, it's that kind of feeling, right? And it just lays right over the GEO mat. Your fat mat there. What I loved about it instantly was like, wait a minute. So all my existing fat mats are now usable with RPGs. Like, boom, right?
Yep.
And what sizes is going to be available? And are you going to do the full range? What are you guys thinking of?
Well, we're really excited. Right now, we're starting off, and our pledges with the start off is a 3x3 and a 3x6 GEO mat.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's like a laminate. It's like a heavy duty laminate, though, right? It's about I say it's 0.5 millimeter thick. And some people might be like, oh, that's not very thick. Trust me, it's pretty thick. And it's very durable. And that was another thing through R&D that I went from, the thicker versions to the super thin versions. And this is kind of the one I went with. But we also want, with the Kickstarter, we want the people that are part of this Kickstarter to help us decide where to go from here. And we've been getting a lot of great feedback already from close friends within the industry. And a couple have mentioned, the possibility of doing just a pure clear one to put over their collectible board games.
Oh, right.
Because it's so durable, right? Just think of it like a big card sleeve for your tabletop game. Right. When all your friends are over and you don't want to, and I was thinking about it too. I have one of the original Robo Rallies, right? The first edition Robo Rally.
Right.
And you're putting 4 to 6 of those together. So you put the Geo mat over the top of it, and I've played around with this. You put the Geo mat over the top of it, it's going to keep all of the different board pieces together. They're not going to be sliding away. And now if anything spills on it, no problem, just wipes right off, right?
Yep.
So there's a lot of options here, and we're really open for the community to help us decide where to go from here. It's no problem. We're looking at hexes on them, different size hexes, different size squares. We can really do anything, and the nice thing is with the Geomat and the material we have, we're talking precise measurements for these grids, where there's not going to be, it's not going to be perfectly square in the middle, but at one end of your mat, it's stretched out to 1 by 1.5.
Yeah.
These geomats, the way they're produced, it's going to be precise grids that go over any one of your fat mats that you've already have. We're going to bring out some new exciting fat mats. We're looking to with the Kickstarter, we're going to have some bundles where we're going to have 2-sided fat mats.
Ooh.
And that's something we haven't done with the 6x4s, because I personally don't like them for the 6x4s because it slides around the table a little too much. But on top of a geomat, when you're at the kitchen table and you're doing tabletop, is different than doing like a tabletop game where you're leaning on the table, you're reaching across the table all the time to move your armies. We don't want, we want that grippy neoprene to hold down on the table so you're not sliding the whole thing across, right?
Right.
Where with an RPG, you're not going to be standing over it, doing that kind of stuff. Only the DM really manipulates the table. So, and it's a really exciting thing too, because, I showed you guys at the at Gen Con that, in our games, we have all of the terrain set up, and then the DM puts like the floor plans of the buildings in the village. We have the Cobbletown village set up with all the buildings on it, and as we go into a building, you lift off the building, and there's the floor plan as you're walking around and stuff like that.
That was my favorite part of everything you showed us, was just that showing how you can go from that 3D environment, and then you take the building off when you're done walking through the streets, and there's the full layout of the building right there on the mat, still with the whole grid and everything in place. Was just a really cool kind of like multi-layered dimensional playing surface. It was really cool.
And I think the brilliance of this, I have to just gush for a minute here, because as you were showing this, Doug, to us, and I realized a couple things. So one, like I play D&D 5e like at least 2 or 3 times a month now with my family, and we've moved to, for a while there I was trying to use grid surfaces with little cutout pieces, and it was just too much work. And I went back to the rollout mat, or I also have some tiles that kind of lock together, but they're all white or gray and they're kind of ugly looking. But it's a grid, and so you draw on them with your dry erase, and it's a fast way to do it. But it's either white or gray, right? I mean, that's what you've got. Most people may have a beige mat. And when you showed this, I was like, oh my God, my entire collection of all my miniature wargaming mats now, my snow mat and my jungle mat and my lava mat and my desert mat. Now with this one new purchase, all of those now in my D&D parties in a desert or a jungle or winter, I can immediately give that feeling to the players. But I'm still drawing like literally on top of the mat. But now that I've got the geomat in place, I'm drawing on a laminate that doesn't ruin anything, and I'm drawing those pictures. And then as Craig just said, you can put you can either slide 2D paper cutouts under the geomat, so now you've got, like the 2-dimensional look, or if you've got buildings, you put them on top, and maybe you draw insights under there, and then all of a sudden, the whole thing just gets kicked up to a level that is fantastic. And quite frankly, I can't believe it's one of those ideas. It's like, how the hell does this not already exist? It's just so brilliant. Was it hard to find a material to make this work?
Yeah, we went through a lot of different things, a lot of different materials for this, and it was really important for me to be able to, if somebody's purchasing this, that, you can, the reusability of it, right? I mean, the one thing, and we'll have this warning within the geomat itself, is, you can use dry erase on it, but if you leave dry erase on it, it'll stain, because that's how kind of dry erase works. You put it anywhere, it's going to stain eventually. Right. Where the wet erase and the wax pins, which actually work way better on this surface, or just in your game, because then you're not smearing it off and like, wait, what was there? For example, we had the Grassy Plains mat, and our DM had all the trees and stuff in it, all over it. So it was the fat mat, the GEO mat, and then all these trees on top. And then we go through the forest and we find this cavern. So he slides, he's like, okay, here's the cavern entrance. He slides it underneath, and it was basically a drop down cave into the ground, almost like a well that we could go down. Well,
That's
we
awesome.
got chased back out. We got chased back out of it, and as we were being chased, one of my party members' arm got cut off. So he wasn't planning on that. Like it does, right? So,
yeah, as they do.
Right.
As they do, right? So he's sitting there, and he's like, okay, well, I don't have an arm to put here, so he writes down in wax pen, writes down a little arm with my buddy's magic axe in his hand still, and he's like, okay, it's there. And then we go running off, and we had to chase through the forest, lose these guys, fight them, get rid of them, and then try to circle back around to grab his arm. And
as you do,
right? Yeah. So when dynamic stuff happens like that fast, and then you have that here, and with the wax, which is pretty cool, is you can actually roll it up, put it away. The next time you go to campaign, boom, you roll it back out. His hand's still there.
Right.
Am I hearing the possible resurgence of the grease pencil
We are,
into
Craig.
the gaming?
We're bringing
That's crazy.
We're bringing the grease pencil back, Craig. It is now the de facto.
There's your tagline.
Right, bringing the grease pencil back.
Get Todd on that.
In fact,
there's your tagline.
In fact, Doug, I think in Kickstarter there should be a free grease pen. That should be the $1 level, right? You back for $1, you get a grease pencil.
I think you're onto something.
Because when you get right down to it, the grease pencil is useless unless they get the GEO map.
I tell you what, if you do that, I will tell you this right now on the air, Doug. If you do that, I will write a quote and endorse it on your Kickstarter.
Grease pencil.
Best possible grease pencil accessory ever, Russ Winkler. I will do that for you.
I am going to make that happen.
That needs to happen.
That's got to happen.
This is super. And the thing about this, because it turns that, and I think it's hard to overstate the value of the grid. So a lot of RPG DMs have moved away from the grid because they don't like how as I mentioned, the current options for grids are either the rollout monocolor thing or the tiles. But the thing that makes grid great is we were playing on a grid the other day on the ugly tiles, quite frankly. But, you mentioned an arm getting cut off, which I know happens a lot, or you drop your sword because you fumble and you got to get your sword back. Or what often happens, spells get cast, right? Someone casts a web, right? Well, you can go fumbling around trying to find your web template someplace, or someone could grab a grease pencil or a dry erase or a wet erase marker, whatever your favorite tool is, and all of a sudden you write right on the grid, here's where the web is, right? Or here's where the burning fire from the fireball is now sitting on the grid. So you can easily add it to any of your great-looking surface, but it looks cool now because all those cool fat mat stuff's under it, making it look awesome. So I think it's fantastic. And then we didn't even talk about the idea of, like, you put a hexes on there, now you're playing Battletech on an awesome-looking board, right? So any of your favorite games. What are you guys thinking for the Kickstarter? Are you sticking with just the grid for now, or are you going to do some other options?
We're gonna have other options, and we want everybody that gets involved in the Kickstarter to help us decide what's the next step with which grid, which size are people really interested in. We have a lot of people asking us not only about role-playing grids, but also grids for other games, Malifaux deployment line grid. People are asking for that kind of stuff too, which you can easily fit right over your 3x3 Malifaux mat. If that's an option that enough of the people that are supporting us on Kickstarter are interested in, we're absolutely for that. And like I said before, I'm in this gaming industry because I'm a gamer and I love doing this kind of stuff. And if I find out people out there are interested in broadening what we're planning with this, I'm good with that too. I mean, if they want no grid on it for their board games and enough people are interested in it, we're absolutely going to do it. Absolutely.
Well, you just gave me another idea. The no grid one could work with a miniature game too, for either because a lot of these. I'm thinking of like the new edition of 40K, right, where there's all these different crazy deployment options, right? So like there's diagonal deployment options where they're really, and you're not going to have a separate set of these things for everything, but it'd be much easier to just throw it in a tape measure and draw a quick line across your table, right? So if you imagine, or in the middle of the game, someone casts a spell that's an odd diameter, you could just draw it on the board, right?
Absolutely. Or any kind of game, any kind of tabletop game where you have a bunch of different images or pictures or loose mats that are working together, where you need a safe surface to overlay over it to keep everything down. You know, that's something it's basically, you know, the protector for the tabletop. So, I mean, there's no limit on this. We want to bring it out there, and I'm sure there's, you know, a big community that we haven't really thought of, that I haven't played the game of yet, that you know, are interested in us doing something for them too, and we're happy to be there for them and help support them as well. So
super cool. I can't wait to. I know by the time this show airs, the Kickstarter's already live. So you guys doing the full? Is it a 30-day Kickstarter, or what's the plan of attack on this one?
Well, right now we want to get it going. I want it out there. I wanted it to people. You know, this is our 4th Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. Our first 3 have all been successful, and we've shipped them all either on time or before we promised we would ship them. And Todd and I are really excited about just getting this one going. So we're talking only a 14 or 15-day Kickstarter on this one.
Oh, quick. And so why now? And people sometimes ask us this question, and people are always really curious how effective Kickstarter is and how people maximize its value. So, you know, as you mentioned, this is your 4th Kickstarter. Tableware, obviously an ongoing company now. You guys are shipping product all the time, online orders. Why Kickstarter this time? Why aren't you just building it and going? What do you guys like about the Kickstarter format for something like this?
Well, it goes back to, you know, the supporters of the Kickstarter helping us develop where we go with this. If this is a new product, it's coming out, it's never been seen before. If people get involved in this and are working with us and giving us their opinions and their advice on maybe their game that maybe we haven't thought of, then we can bring that out right away. So their support kind of helps bring the product to, you know, who we want it to get to. I don't know how to explain that right.
I get it.
But
that makes sense.
But, you know, one thing we've seen a lull in the Kickstarter. So a 30-day Kickstarter, you know, you see a bunch of excitement the week 1. You see a week or 2 of kind of everybody just, you know, some ads, some, and then towards the end, then people jump on again. So that's 2 weeks. We're trying to cut that down so everybody is basically going to get their product 2 weeks sooner, right? So that's kind of our focus. Is we think we got this idea. We think it, you know, the Kickstarter goal is pretty low. I think we're going to beat it, no problem. But we want the support from the community. And this is a tabletop. You know, this is a RPG game. You know, we've mostly been focusing on tabletop, so we're broadening, you know, kind of our focus from Tableware as well. So this is another way of us introducing ourselves to maybe some people that weren't really familiar with us as well. So that, you know, that Kickstarter kind of helps promote us in that way as well.
Cool. Now, are you going to so this is mentioned you're going to go for 2 weeks, and basically the second half of September here. So, by the time this episode is live, it's already underway, so don't miss the window. How fast is this going to ship? Is this stuff pretty much going to? We're not looking at years from now, right? You're thinking pretty soon.
No, we're looking at trying to get it to the customers by December.
Sweet. So this is something you're basically we don't want to say in time for the holidays, but in time for the new year, basically.
And yeah, we're looking at New Year.
Yeah.
I think our initial goal is to get it by the New Year to our customers.
Awesome. Oh, I'm in. And I have to ask you this: so you guys have a bunch of your current line of mats, obviously, you know, primarily, although you have some really cool stuff out there, primarily targeting miniature games. So there's not really a cobblestone mat that would be a good dungeon underlay. Are you going to be doing something for that?
Well, we have the Cobbletown and the Winter Cobbletown. Those are our new mats that just came out, and those come in 3x3, 6x4, and 4x4.
Yep.
We are looking to. We will be bringing out some cave mat, like a cave, you know, cave surface,
right?
And then a dungeon. So we'll have the dungeon one will be more kind of, you know, man-made, you know, brick, you know, big stone working kind of dungeon floor. And then we'll have a cave style flooring as well. So those will be two mats that will be coming out with the Kickstarter, and either will be an add-on to the Kickstarter or part of our bundle.
Very nice. Very nice.
So by the time this comes out, check us out. We'll be you can find the GeoMat link and find information about GeoMat at tableware.com, or you can go to Kickstarter and just search for the GeoMat.
Well, Doug, that's fantastic. Craig, do you have any questions for Doug? I can't wait. This is definitely on my Christmas list. I'm going to be back in now.
I didn't have any questions after Gen Con other than when is it going and when can I get mine?
Right, when can I get mine? Because I think you can't overstate, like, this turns your entire collection of miniature wargaming mats into RPG mats. Yeah.
It's a force multiplier for your toys.
Now, here's the other thing. You always see these cool mats, right? And you're like, I really want the snow mat. But how many times do I play War Machine in the snow? Oh, wait. But I've also got that D&D Frost Giant campaign coming up. Now I can justify the purchase because I can use it twice at least for 2 different gaming groups, right? So boom, already the value of your mat doubles. As a personal mat collector. So I need a mat. So to Doug, I need to request a new product, maybe a stretch goal here. I need a mat storage system.
Oh yes.
Because my mat collection is growing, as you might have.
I have an antique umbrella stand that's beautiful, right out of an Irish pub.
Oh, that's cool.
I recommend one of those because they're only like $300 or $400. I inherited mine, but $300 or $400, and it's a beautiful place for all these fat mats.
That's what I. Yeah,
I went a little cheaper than that. I went the IKEA towel rack with the hooks.
Ooh, there you go.
Now I have 2 of those on each side of my gaming table with 15 hanging from it each. So
see, I need to go that route. There you go.
That sounds more practical.
That's the plan now.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, but now I need to look at umbrella. I mean, for that, for the
look.
The half dozen that I use all the time.
I'm telling you, man.
You've heard of you've heard of the elephant foot umbrella stands, which are terrible,
that are illegal.
Yeah, but I want a dragon claw umbrella stand.
Ooh, I bet you could.
Ooh,
see,
I like that.
I got to call up Dogbite or somebody and carve me a 3,000-pound dragon claw wooden umbrella stand to hold my tableware mats. Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome. Well,
hey, Russ, guess what? Quick Google search. They exist.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Never mind. I'm ordering 3. Okay, excellent.
Do they really?
Are they cheaper than your
yeah, that's a dragon claw. Yep. 42 best Harry Potter mini. Yeah, it's a Harry Potter thing. It's a Pinterest thing, though. It didn't come up as a sale on the sale. So
yeah, I'm not.
You might have to make one yourself.
Yeah, I'm not confident about this, Craig. I'm looking at these images, not finding the.
There's one. It looks like a goofy dragon foot, but I'm just saying.
I don't know.
Just saying. There.
All right. Still work to be done. So it's storage now. So I'm going to have all these. I'm going to have my GeoMat, my fat mats, and I need storage. That's the problem. So Doug, thanks for coming on. So as you mentioned, one last plug. So where should folks go to check you guys out on your main website or the Kickstarter?
They can go on both. If they go to the Kickstarter, they just search for the GeoMat or Tableware.
Yep.
If they want to go and find us through the tableware.com first. If they can't find us at Kickstarter for some reason, they can go to tableware.com and find us there. Also, just a quick plug on the Kickstarter. We're going to have some early bird pledges for the first 5 days, which will have some special pricing on the initial 3x3s and 3x6 1-inch grids.
Right.
So just to let everybody know, check them out.
Yeah, you I think you guys mentioned to us you're going to be doing chalk line grids too for certain kinds of sports ball games, maybe.
Well, that's another thing. That's another thing that we were looking at, and we can do white.
That's cool.
Ink on these. So if you have a game system that plays like in space or something like that, and you need a grid, you're not going to see the black ink grid. So we're looking into and can do the white hexes as well. So
I hadn't even thought about that.
Just that contrasting color on depending on what you're doing. So if you're in space and you need the white chalk, or maybe you have a pitch for say your favorite football sports-esque style game,
right?
We can do the white. We can do the white instead of the black as well.
See, and that's cool because now all of a sudden you can play your favorite sports ball game in the winter or the summer or the spring or the jungle. All you need is the underlying fat mats, which of course you have for all your miniature games. This is brilliant, Doug. This is I can't wait to see the reaction to this. I think it's going to be fantastic. I'll take 3. I just got to put a reminder in my system now to remind me to go to bid on this, as we're recording a couple days before it goes live. So very cool. Well, Doug, the other thing we should say is there is the D6G Kickstarter curse, but I'm feeling pretty good about this one, Craig. I think this one might break the curse.
Yeah, I think once you're a pro, I think you're in pretty good shape.
Right. So we're feeling
not that we haven't killed pros. Now that I think of it, never mind. That was a bad thing to say.
When you're a seasoned veteran, there's been
okay. Seasoned veterans have fallen as well. But I have a good feeling. I have a good feeling
about this one. I feel
bad about myself right now, but I feel good about your Kickstarter.
Having seen where you guys are on this, and seen the version in front of us and the quality, and just knowing you guys and what you do, this is going to be awesome. So. We're very much looking forward to watching this thing, Doug. Thanks again for sharing it with us.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, Total Fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire.
Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakelin and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. This week, our shout out is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6Generation and you too can support the show. Excuse me. So this week I had a neat opportunity to do a drive program out in California. Many of them are held in California, and we have these drive routes that we do. And one of the interesting things that happens is you stop and they find cool places for you to have like lunch or whatever. I'm like, okay, so I'm watching my colleagues who are attending earlier waves of this program, and they've got pictures that they're saying the car is at Skywalker Ranch. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, they must be just like somehow have found an overlook that somehow the property behind there a million miles away is Skywalker Ranch. And then I find out that no, in fact, they have wrangled a way for us to actually have Skywalker Ranch as our sort of home base for this entire drive program. So we drive out there, and then when we're testing out the different models, we test them back and forth driving in and out of Skywalker Ranch, like little drive loops for like half-hour loops. So that means the whole time I'm at Skywalker Ranch for this drive program and trying to really focus on the fact that I'm supposed to be driving a car and working, and the whole time in my head I'm going, oh my God, I'm at Skywalker Ranch. And they did a tour of the one building, because there's multiple buildings in the property. They did a tour of the one that we were at, which looks like a giant old Victorian. But what was kind of funny is you're not allowed to bring any cameras inside, and you have to sign like a little waiver and all this stuff, and it's like all top secret. So there's a giant wraparound porch that has a table in it. You could put your stuff in there, or you could give it to them, because really this is a bunch of journalists. It's not even just like random tourists. Like everybody has cameras, everybody has video equipment, everybody has all this stuff. So we weren't allowed inside with any of it, not even our phones. Like they made sure that that we put our phones, either we had to leave them on this giant table on this wraparound porch, or we could give them to this person sitting at a desk, and they gave us a little receipt. Like, here, this is your phone. You can come back for it when you're done. Even if you wanted to walk inside the house to use the restroom, nope, take your phone out of your pocket, put in a little basket, get your little receipt, go use the bathroom, come back out, get your phone when you present your little receipt. So it was like, the security was really kind of funny. I'm like, okay, so don't want any of us taking a picture of a random, Star Wars prop in the hallway. So it was very fun. We got to eat lunch inside of the house and, wander through the main level, which was really neat, because when do you get to see that kind of thing? And they even had really strict rules about how you could take pictures. So outside even. So you couldn't take a picture of just the house. You couldn't take a picture of just the house with one of the cars in front of it. It was the Lexus LS, which is this beautiful $75,000-ish luxury sedan. But you could take a picture as long as there was a person in it. So if you wanted to do a selfie, or you wanted to pose in front of the house, or pose with a car in the house, you could do that. But no straight up pictures of just the house. The sort of kind of exception to that was they staged one car for us a little bit further out on the property. And if you looked over the trees in the corner, you could sort of make out the fact that was in fact the building in the background. So this is really pretty lake, and they put one of the red cars in front of it. It looks all great. But what made it even better is that it wasn't just some lake. It was called Lake Ewok, which amused me to no end that it was called Lake Ewok. So the only picture we have where you have the car and the house has a house wee tiny in the background over in the distance over Lake Ewok. So it was a really neat opportunity for my worlds to collide once again. And I actually got to spend some time at Skywalker Ranch and now feel like I have been to like the mothership of all things Star Wars.
You're listening to the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com. More fun than Merchant of Venus. Wait, what? Who writes these?
Hey, welcome back. So I've been dying to talk about this game, and
it's true. He has been literally dying.
We got this one at Gen Con. So Catalyst Game Labs, our friends over there, said, hey, you know what you need? You need a review copy of Dragonfire, and as long as listeners will know how this works on the show is we get review copies from all kinds of game manufacturers, and we appreciate it, and we always give them away. We try to try them all. If we don't like them, we just mention them in achievements, and that's the end of that. But if we don't love them, but if one of us, it only takes one of us, as you'll remember, longtime listeners will remember from Agricola, that if even one of us on the show likes a game, we'll talk about it. But if we like it enough to be like, oh, this is a game I'm going to play several times, I'm really into this, I'd buy it myself. And we often do because we don't get to keep the review copies. We could, but we don't. We always give them away. So I was really excited about Dragonfire anyway. So we'll talk about that. It's not just going into this just as a high level. This is a deck building game set in the Dungeons and Dragons universe, right? And it takes place. Each player is playing a D&D character, and essentially you're going through encounters that are, represented by cards on the table, and building your character by building your deck, right, is essentially the game's play. And going into this, Craig, you were a good sport, but you're kind of like, I'm not sure this is my cup of tea, right?
Well, I mean, you go in with half a strike on deck builder. Mm-hmm. But I love D&D, and Dragonfire really does an awesome job of leveraging all of the artwork from the current generation of Dungeons and Dragons products across all of the different products. So it looks beautiful. And so I was willing to give it a shot.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to try it because I do like a lot of deck building games. It's not like my favorite genre, but I like playing them. And I knew my kids were super into D&D, of course, and we're always looking for ways to fiddle around the universe. So really excited to try this one, and so let's talk about it. So obviously it came out this year. It was actually released at Gen Con. It doesn't officially hit the streets, Craig. I don't think until December.
Really?
So this is a little bit early. Yep. So hope you don't get you guys too excited for this, but you might be able to see it on store shelves in the not too distant future. It is based on Shadowrun Crossfire. Is a game that Catalyst Game Labs already produced, and they took the mechanics from that. They've changed them quite a bit to make them more D&D-like, but it's essentially that game in the D&D universe, right? So if you like Shadowrun Crossfire, you will like this. And if you're familiar with that, but weren't a big Shadowrun fan, you'll probably also like this. If you loved that and you always wanted to try it in D&D, you'll also probably like this. In case you're not familiar with that, don't worry about it because we're going to tell you how it works. It is a 2 to 6 player co-op game. Its MSRP suggested retail price is $59.99, so $60. And Craig, if you'd be so kind, would you give me a dramatic reading, please, sir, of Dragonfire, the game?
Dragonfire is a cooperative deck-building game set within the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Players choose from a number of races, from dwarf to elf, half-orc to human, while assuming the quintessential role of cleric, rogue, fighter, and wizard. Equipped with weapons, spells, and magic items, players begin their adventure along the famed Sword Coast, then expand to other locales across the Forgotten Realms, such as Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter, and Waterdeep in future expansions. Along the way, players level up their characters, opening access to additional equipment, feats, and more. Join the quest and build your own legend.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. That's it. So how does this work? Well, first, you got to open the box. And in the box, you're going to find a great box control, a nice vacuum form plastic insert that really keeps everything in order. And there is plenty of room in there for expansions. So I feel like, I don't know if you'll ever be able to hold every expansion they come out with this, assuming the game does well. Judging by how fast it was moving at Gen Con, I think the game's going to do pretty well. But it does hold. At Gen Con, they are also selling the first expansion, which has a bunch more character cards. I have that in there with the full base game, and all of that easily fits in there. We're still with room for more. So in there, you're going to get 86. You're going to get several different decks of cards. Encounter cards, 86 of those. Market cards, 60 of those, which is all different abilities you can buy for your characters. There's also 48 basic market cards, which those go to build your starting equipment pack, basically, your starting gear for your character. 24 of these Dragonfire cards, which sort of like amp each round up and make the game give it a little more dynamic feel. More about that. You get 54 magic item cards, which are these really cool. All the art in the game is fantastic, as Craig mentioned.
Yeah, beautiful.
They've captured the art. My girls were diving. It was great because I was like, girls, I want you to see this game. It's based on Just Dragons. Like, why don't we just play D&D? I'm like, well, the rest of the party's not here. We can't do that right now. And as soon as the box opened and they were looking at the art, oh, this is the one from the Player's Handbook. Oh, I think I've seen this one. Is that the Dungeon Master's Guide? Oh, this up close looks awesome. Like they're really getting into it because all RPG players know you spend so much time just lovingly going through those books. The art becomes like old friends. So it's just great to see this stuff. And there's a lot of it in there that's from some of the more obscure books maybe you haven't seen. So it's bringing it all together in one great place. So, but the magic item cards take it to an even new level. They've got these cool, items on them there, magic potions, magic swords, magic armor, and it's got that sort of metallic sheen on it that glimmers as you tilt it. So it's got that. They're really high-end cards, like foils from Magic, if you will, that are great because they just give you that extra feel of why they're important. And these are cards you're going to get as you play the campaign mode. Between each session, you're going to level up and make these permanent parts of your character. You also get 16 of these character cards. These are very, very long. And think of them as like little mini Dungeon Master screens. So the edges of them fold in, and then they stand up in front of you. And one side is sort of your starting equipment and all your stats, and there's a row on the top with your current hit points. Really big, bold artwork on them indicating who you are. And the other side just got a bunch of lines on it designed for you to write on the card to keep track of not only mechanics like experience gained, but also like to write down some of your adventures and actually make a story out of it. So it's kind of got a feel, because there's also a pack of stickers. And these stickers are designed to stick on your character card and permanently change your character as you play through the campaign. So it's got a little bit of that legacy game feel where you're going to physically alter your character cards as you play the game. Now, it is coded in such a way that you could use dry erase markers and you probably could peel the stickers off, but I think in honesty, these are probably, each of these cards are one-use things, but you still got 16 character cards, which is plenty. And then there's expansion.
And the expansion has how many more?
32 more in a character expansion. So you got plenty of replayability before you got to even buy a new expansion to restart it all again if you wanted to. So I think there's plenty there. You do get 160 of those stickers. More about those later. You get these 8 oversized adventure cards, and these cards sort of describe the exact nature of the adventure you're playing in this session. And more about those a little bit. You get 2 booklets, both full color. You get the full color rule book, and it's a little bit meaty. It's not super long as game rule books go, but it's, I want to say it's like 30, 35 pages, and it's got a lot of 31 pages, including the glossary and everything. Full color, a lot of rules, but there's also a little 4-page quick start rule booklet. And you can just basically pull that quick start thing out and get started with the game. There are some issues with the quick start. I'll talk more about that later. But it is a great way to get the mechanics down super, super fast. Also comes with some tokens, quite a few of those. And these cute little... So I remember I mentioned along the top of your character screen, there's these little square boxes with numbers in them. Those represent your hit points. But there's also these cool little... they look like little fancy paper clips, but the paper clips have swords in the center. So you slide these over the top of your character cards, and there's a little sword then pointing to a number that shows your current hit points. So you have these little sliders you can slide up and down your character card to indicate your current hit points. You'll also be using those on the monster cards to indicate how much damage they've taken as well. And as I mentioned before, there's a great insert. So a lot of great stuff in the box. I don't know, Craig, how do you feel about a $60 price tag for that? What's there? Given it's mostly a card game, but there was a lot of art there.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I would say I was a little surprised at the $60 price tag. It looked a little more like $50 to me, but I don't know how much they had to pay for all that other stuff that they've put in there. And it's jam-packed, and the box control is awesome. My only hesitation would be that most of the artwork has been seen before.
Right.
But it's awesome having it all in one place. It's awesome sort of re-experiencing it in this new venue. And so I don't think $60 is outrageous. It's a little more than I would have thought, but that probably means it's the right price, right?
Yes.
Because the price is where you're like, oh, okay, still got to have it. That's the ideal price from a retail point of view anyway.
Sure, and also it's a licensed product, so somebody's got to go back to Wizards of the Coast.
That's true. Well. That's true. Yeah.
So you got to factor that in. But I feel like you're right. I mean, they didn't have to pay for original artwork, but given games of that size with that much art in there, I think the price it's not a oh my god amazing value, but I don't think it's overpriced either. I think it's right about where it should be.
Right.
So let's talk about setting the game up. So the first thing you're going to want to do, and you're going to get drawn right to this as soon as you open the box, you're going to get drawn to those super long character cards and start flipping through there, because as a D&D player, you're going to immediately understand what you're looking at. There's going to be this great artwork of like a tiefling casting a lightning bolt, or a fighter, or a rogue, and there's going to be this splash icon on there of like the class archetype. And so the game has the 4 class archetypes, sort of the rogue, the arcane type, the wizard, the fighter type, and then of course sort of the druidic, I think they call it the holy type. And so basically there's these 4 overall archetypes, but each card has the specific class on there along with the specific race. A lot of the classes have the subclass in there, so it might be druid, maybe type of dwarf, and all the iconography on there to tell you what your starting gold's going to be for this character, what your starting hit points are going to be for this character, your starting basic cards, which they call the equipment pack, so what kind of abilities you're going to have out of the box, and what types of abilities you're going to have, as well as your starting hand size. And these are very impactful things. And so once you play the game enough to know the basic rules, you're really going to have a good feeling for what these characters can do. Excuse me, and there's a very broad spectrum. Now, some of the characters also have really cool game-changing abilities written right onto their stat card. For example, some of them might say, I'm trying to think of them. Oh, one of them I think adds an extra card to the market, for example, things like that. So they do add a little bit of dynamics to the game and change some of that as well. So it's pretty neat abilities right there in the characters. So you're going to want to pick your characters. Now, one of the rules, though, is, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the game has built-in requirements for party balance. So all 4 class types must be assigned to someone. So if you have a 4-player game, you must have a fighter type, a holy type, a rogue type, and a arcane type, right? That's just got to be the way it is. And now, so you can't have 2 fighters, but you could have a cleric, a druid, a thief, and a paladin, right? You can do that sort of thing. If you have more than 4 players, because it handles up to 6, then you can have some duplicates, and you can choose where your duplicates are going to be. If you have less than 4 players, no one has to play 2 characters, but someone has to be assigned a second archetype. And there's little tokens for that. And that is required because some of the game mechanics, the monsters and everything, are sort of expecting there's at least one of every type. So it's just sort of a game balance issue. And there is a little bit of mitigation in that. Your equipment pack is slightly better if you have to be someone with more than 1 class. And so that's all built into the game as well. So each player, you're going to pick your class, you're going to get your starting gold, you're going to set your starting hit points, and you're going to build your starting deck out of your basic cards. So there's going to be this deck of basic cards, and the icons out of your character's sheet are going to tell how many arcane cards basics you start with, how many fighter basics you start with, and so that's basically your starting deck right there. Yeah. And you're also going to set up the market deck. So there's a whole giant deck of cards that are all the different abilities that over the course of play your characters are going to acquire. This is the deck building part. So you're going to shuffle that giant deck and deal 6 of them face up. And so that's going to show the 6 different things you could buy at the end of during each player turn. Now, some of the abilities and backgrounds can alter the market size, but 6 is the default. There's also, and Craig didn't see this stuff because we played sort of the demo version, but with my daughters I played the full version. There's a Dragonfire deck and Dragonfire token. The Dragonfire deck sort of sets a sort of a tone for the round. I'll talk about that in a second. And there's also an adventure card. Again, Craig and I didn't see this, because we just played the basic version. But the adventure card brings the game to the next level. It really gives you a description of what you're actually doing, a little fluff description. It also goes through the setup of how to set up the 2 adventure decks. So typically there's going to be 2 encounter decks. And these encounter decks are basically going to be piles of monsters or piles of locations. These are going to be shuffled up, and there's icons in the corners of these, and some of them are dungeon icons, some of them are the woods, some of them might be ruins. And so this is indicating the kind of monsters you can find in different environments, not dissimilar from D&D when you're looking at the random monster counter tables, and these monsters are found in the woodlands, these monsters are found in a dungeon. So you're going to have that dungeon deck, but your adventure is going to say, for example, set up Dungeon 1 as the primary encounter deck and Dungeon 2 as the secondary encounter deck. And that just means find all the cards with the Dungeon 1 icon on them, shuffle them up and put them in one pile, shuffle the Dungeon 2 in pile 2, and that's the adventure. Some adventure cards might say one deck is the woods and the other deck is the dungeon, and halfway through the adventure you switch. So they can do all kinds of crazy stuff with that mechanic to make it feel like you're traveling through the lands, right? So it's really very simple. Now, I'm just going to give you an example of the adventure card here. So we already talked about the encounter decks. Then what's going to happen is the game's going to play through a series of what they call scenes. And the scene is basically when the monsters are revealed. You start fighting the monsters until the end of the scene occurs. And that's described also on this adventure card. And then at the end of, when the scene is over, the round ends, and then the next scene begins. And so basically it's essentially, in a very simplified version of this, it's fight monsters, short rest, fight monsters, short rest, fight monsters, short rest. That's each scene, and there's some numbers of scenes per the encounter. Now, some of the encounters are very simple, like this example for a level 1 adventure called Dungeon Crawl. This is very simple. In the first scene, there's going to be a number of monsters from the encounter deck equal to the number of characters. And then once all those monsters are defeated, that starts scene 2, which is the number of monsters per character plus 1. And once those are all defeated, that's the end of scene 2. And then you do scene 3, which is a few more monsters, number of characters plus 2. And that's the end of the scene. But there's like another whole adventure that's much more complicated, that between each scene, like these nomads show up and you fight specific guys, and then if you beat them in different ways, there's there's all these different things that can happen. But in the very simplified version, and Craig, this is what you saw in a super simplified version of this, which is fight through a monster deck until they're all dead, right? Does that make sense so far, Craig?
Or until you die.
Right. Or until you die. Now we'll go through that in a second. Now,
makes sense. Sounds way better than the game I played.
So this is my first problem with the quick start rules. So the good thing is the quick start rules don't use the Dragonfire deck, don't use the encounter, the adventure card.
All the cool stuff you just explained.
Everything I described is not there. All you basically do is shuffle up the dungeon level monster cards and then deal out one guy per player and start fighting them, and you keep fighting them in rounds, and you don't even take short rests, Craig, between each scene. But in a normal adventure, you would take a short rest between each scene, and a short rest heals each hero 1 point, for example. And recovers exhausted. So, that right there already makes it much more winnable. But also, in the first dungeon encounter, Craig, there's only 3 scenes and it's over. So the first adventure is actually easier than the quick start rules.
Yeah, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah. Well, the quick start rules don't make... here's what I recommend the quick start rules. Grab them, follow them, play 2 or 3 rounds, and then just stop. Because all you need to learn from the quick start rules is enough to know the mechanics of the game, so when you're setting your character for the first time and picking their background, then that all makes sense to you. So because what's going to happen when you're playing this for real the first time and you're playing a campaign game, in addition to picking your character, you're going to look through all the stickers that have the word background on them. You're going to pick a sticker, peel it off, and stick it on your character card. This is pretty permanent. So you're going to want to know enough about the game mechanics to understand which backgrounds you want to do. For example, one of the backgrounds is entertainer, and the backgrounds map to D&D backgrounds. So many of the things in the market have restrictions. For example, can only be bought by a rogue, or can only be bought if you played an arcane this round. But the entertainer background lets you ignore that once per game and buy something that doesn't have a restriction, in case you're basically conning the merchant into selling it to you because of your good entertainment skills, right? So there's some cool things like that, but you wouldn't really get what that meant until you'd at least played enough to understand how the market works and all that stuff happens. So I do recommend playing the quick start rules with kind of all the basic stuff, all the cool stuff turned off, just to get the mechanics down. But don't play it to win, don't play it to completion, just play it to 2 or 3 rounds after you kill the monsters off a couple times. Then say, you know what, got this, let's go try an adventure card for real. And play, and I would recommend Adventure 1, the Dungeon Crawl, because that's got just enough meat on its bones to really show you the campaign system and get you excited. So I will say, though, after we played the quick start rules for a couple rounds with my girls, we actually almost beat it. They lost, and they were like, that's super fun. I want all the other cool stuff in the box. Let's pick our characters for real and go. So they got into it. But, Craig, I think your reaction is going to be very common, which is, I need a little more meat on this, and I don't understand why I'm just endlessly fighting monsters. So,
I mean, all the cool stuff in the box description that you had me read isn't included in any of that.
Right, and I didn't mention this to you either, Craig. So there's also a little booklet called The Ancient Evil Arises, and this little booklet is basically like a make-your-own-adventure full of just text with page numbers on it, and then if you use the certain adventure cards, they say, like, read page 5 of the adventure booklet, and that tells you the story, the prologue. Then you do the adventure card, and based on how the scenes work out, you read different pages out of the book. So there's really a whole storytelling element here. There's a pretty meaty little, like, story component, an RPG component to this that is lost if you only do the quick start rules. So I get why they did the quick start rules. I wish they'd just given it only, like, instead of fighting through the entire encounter deck, just make it play 2 rounds, then stop, and then play the real game.
Yeah, I think they really missed a trick with that quick start packet, and might have hurt their brand with it.
I think so too. So that's my only disappointment with the game. So how to play if you're actually playing the full thing. So one other rule came up. My daughters asked me, my daughters are so anal about how rules should really work. So we're playing this co-op game, right? And they're like, Dad, can we show each other the cards? And I said, well, traditionally in co-op games, you don't show each other your hands. I'm not sure what the rules are. Well, what's it officially say? Because I want to show her my cards, but I'm not sure if I'm supposed to. I said, well, I don't know. Let's play. You can't. Well, are we supposed to? So I read it. You can't. So you can discuss. You're not supposed to show. And I think that's designed so that, and what's nice about this game is, even though it's a co-op, there's enough going on with each player that if you don't show the cards to everybody, one player can't run the game. So I think the reason they're asking you not to share the cards is that you're basically talking to each other and saying things like, I can take out 2 of the kobolds and absorb the hit from the 3rd kobolds. Can you guys deal with a mind flare? Right? Like, it's like that kind of conversation can happen. And you're down to like, well, the Marker is invulnerable until someone hits him with a magic spell. Anybody got a magic spell? They get the mind flare first to kind of weaken him up, and then I'll get in there with my sword and I can do some serious damage to him. Like, that's the kind of stuff that'll happen. So you definitely want table talk. It makes it very engaging, but I think you don't want to share the cards. So how does it work? Well, as I mentioned, there's a scene. So the scene's going to start off. You're going to reveal the encounters. And what that basically means is, according to the scene, you're going to start dealing from the encounter deck. And typically what this means is one of the players is player 1. He or she's going to take the top card off the encounter deck. Most of the cards in an encounter deck are monsters. So imagine it's a kobold pack or a zombie swarm or a dragon or whatever, right? And so you put this card. The very first card off the deck is going to be color-coded to match one of the 4 archetypes. And the first card always goes in front of the archetype, or typically does. The adventure cards can change this, but typically goes in front of the character whose archetype matches. So if you draw a card that's red, it goes in front of the red archetype, which is the rogue, right? And then the rest of the cards come up according to the scene. So sometimes there is one per character, sometimes there's just one monster, sometimes there's a couple, there's different rules. But you'll typically go around the table clockwise from the first person. So whoever gets hit with a monster first, you never know. It's based totally on archetype. And then from there, you just roll around. So basically, each character is probably going to have a monster in this current scene that they're facing down. Sometimes more than one monster. There are times where you have more monsters on the table than characters.
Especially if somebody misreads something.
Yes, that may have happened. Yes. So after that, you're going to have the players' turns, which basically, you're also going to reveal a start card. So this is the Dragonfire card. This card comes into play, and it basically says something like, it sets a tone. So it might say something like, they know your weakness. And this one says, for example, it's a phantasm in your mind. And so basically the monsters kind of like know what you're thinking, and it creates a weakness. So, and there's like a game effect in a play. So this one has, for example, players must attempt skill checks twice. So there are some things in the game that require you to make a skill check, and all that means you turn over the top market card, and if its color matches your archetype, you made your skill check. So what this is saying basically is you got to check them twice because the monsters kind of are reading your mind or something and make it harder for you to do whatever you're trying to do. So things like that. Now, the other thing that matters...
Now, doesn't that mean that a skill check is only passed 25% of the time?
Could be, yes. It depends on... Some of the skill checks, though, talk about different ways to trip. You can flip twice and things like that. One thing also to know is there's this thing called the Dragonfire level. Now, typically in most adventures, the Dragonfire level starts at 0, and then the end of each scene will increase the Dragonfire level some amount depending on the adventure, but typically it's 1 per level, per scene, right? So in the first round, it's typically 0. In the second scene, it's typically 1. The third scene, it's 2. But there can be adventures that say, if you really beat the monsters down, it goes up by 2 or 3 or 4. Dragonfire being high is bad, because a lot of these cards, particularly the Dragonfire cards, will have a little red dragon icon with like a 2+ next to it or a 4+ next to it. What that means is that rule is in effect if the Dragonfire level is that number or higher. And some monsters in the monster deck have that icon on them as well. So basically, as the Dragonfire level goes up, more bad powers kick in on monsters and on event cards. So after the start card's drawn, and we see what kind of situation we're in this round, then each player is going to take their turn, and we're going to keep going around the table in player turn order over and over again until the scene is ended, which usually means all the monsters are dead, but not always. There are other adventure cards that have different scene ending situations, but typically we're going to fight until all the monsters are dead. Now, this is the first mistake I made with Craig and kind of ruined the game, which was I kept drawing new monsters, thinking the end of the round was after each player had a turn, but it's not. The end of the round is synonymous with the end of the scene, and that means that usually all the monsters are dead. So don't keep adding monsters after each player goes. No. Don't do that. That makes it impossible.
That will make it a very fast, not fun game.
Yeah, don't make that mistake. All right. So what is a player... And after all that's over, so after all the monsters are dead, you take what's called a short rest, which everybody heals a hit point. Exhausted tokens are removed. You get another chance to purchase cards. And then you go on to the next scene, which is typically draw more monsters, but all kinds of strange things can happen between scenes. But the meat of the game is in those player turns. So after the monsters have been revealed, now we're going to try to kill some monsters. So the game is primarily emulating combat in Dungeons & Dragons, right? So during your turn, you're going to play cards. Now, each of the players has a deck, and that deck was built by the iconography on your player card, and it's all on your player screen, and it's all basic cards at the beginning of each adventure, right? So I'm sitting there with my deck of basic cards, and if I'm a wizard, maybe like 5 or 6 of them are arcane cards, and there's one of each other type in there or something like that. And depending on your class, they're different. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my starting hand, and that starting hand size is also different based on your character. It's typically between 3 to 4 to 5 cards, depending on your character type and your race. So I'm going to fan those out in front of me, and I'm going to start playing those cards. Now, most of these cards deal direct damage, and so now is probably a good time to pause and talk about what the monster cards look like. So in front of you now, at the beginning of the scenario, there's a monster card, right, Craig? Now, do you remember what the monster card kind of looked like?
Yes, I do. It had a cool picture of the monster, and then it had, at the bottom, was a description of what happens when it attacks. Is that correct? And then in the right-hand margin, the card shows you basically tiers of hit points and the kind of, like, either straight up normal, like generic damage that's required to go to the next tier, or if it's a specific kind of damage that's required to go to the next tier. So it might say 1 magic to get through the first tier, and then the next tier might be 2 generic damage, and then the next one might be 1 rogue. And so you're going to have to combine your abilities with each other to sort of how you're going to take out the monster, which if you squint really hard, I think there's sort of a cool narrative element to that. Like, oh, you're going to have to cast a spell and then sneak around, but it's really kind of straight up mechanical the way it's presented.
Yeah, so example here. So you nailed it, Craig. So on a monster, typically, like I'm looking at a giant spider right now. So in the upper left-hand corner, there's the gold or XP icon, the gold icon, and it shows a 6. So that means when we kill this giant spider, we're going to get 6 gold to spend in the market. But first, we got to kill him. Now, in the text area there, and this is beautiful artwork of a giant spider, there's also a color behind him indicating he's red, which means that's the kind of the class archetype he matches, which also means that class archetype probably has an advantage at killing him. More about that in a second. You don't need to know that, though, because it's kind of indicating the icons as Craig discussed. So there'll be some keywords on there. This one's a beast, and that matters because certain cards do better damage to beasts or undead or whatever. And there might be some fun little flavor text down there, and there may or may not be some special rules. So the giant spider has no special rules. But, for example, the gelatinous cube does have a special rule. So when you vanquish the gelatinous cube, choose another player, and that player draws a card. So basically, the gelatinous cube dies, and some good goodies fall out of him for somebody, right? Now, the giant spider's got some icons on the right-hand side, as Craig suggested. And what's interesting about this is it's kind of like what they call damage levels. So the first icon is the rogue icon. Now, we mentioned that each player is holding a bunch of cards, right? Most of these cards don't have any fancy text on them. They just have cool art, and they have these icons that match the major archetypes in the upper left-hand corner. So typically you'll see an icon of the rogue icon, or there'll be an icon of the blue holy icon, or an icon of the swords from the martial class. And basically, if you see the rogue icon, so the first icon on the giant spider is one rogue icon. And that means that you got to do a point of damage of rogue. So if I play a card from my hand that's got the rogue icon on the top of corner, that means it's going to do 1 point of rogue damage. So I can play that on top of this giant spider to take off his first level of damage. So I would take one of those little sword paper clips I talked about and slide it right there to indicate that I did that. The next icon on the giant spider has got a gray circle in it with the number 3. And that means that any 3 points of damage will take that level out. So I could then play 2 more cards, and those cards could have the blue symbol for holy and the green symbol for druidic, and that'd be 2 points of damage. And let's say I've got a martial card in there that's 3 points of damage. So I've done 3 points of damage, and because the number is 3 and it's gray, it doesn't matter what the source type of that damage is, right? So then if I can get all 3 on him, I can move that sword clip down 1, and now we've taken out the rogue damage tier, and now we've taken out the generic damage tier. And on the spider, there's still another rogue damage tier after that, and then there's a 1 point of anything damage after that, and then the spider's dead. So to kill this giant spider, I've got to do the right combination of damage, and to Craig's point, the fluff here is it's rogue damage first. You got to do something sneaky to the spider to get her off his attention. Then you can hit him hard with anything you want. Then you got to sneak a little bit again. Then you tap him lightly, and he finally dies. The last thing on the card you're going to see is a blood splotch with a number in it, and that's how much damage the spider does back to you if you don't kill him before he gets to attack, right? And so that's pretty much the system there then is you're going to play combinations of cards out of your hand to find the right combination of icons you need to kill a monster. What's interesting is I don't have to just attack the cards in front of me. So I can attack the card in front of Craig or the card in front of me, as long as I can split the cards in my hand any way I want up amongst those damages. But the thing to remember is, unless you do enough damage points to take an entire level out on the card, you don't move the clip down. So if the spider's got a gray 3, and I can only do 2 points of damage with the cards in my hand, I might as well not play them, because unless you can take them all the way down that tier, the damage doesn't carry over to the next player's turn. So you got to hit him hard enough to make him feel it, basically. Right, Craig?
Yep.
All right. So that's it for killing. So that's pretty much, you're going to play cards. Now, the thing to remember is when you get cards from the market later in the game, those cards are going to have multiple icons in the corner and do all kinds of crazy cool stuff. Like, they'll have words like assist on them, which means I can play that card during Craig's turn. So in Craig's turn, Craig's like, oh, I can almost kill this giant spider, but I just need if someone could do a point of rogue damage to him right now between when I'm playing these 2 cards, I can hit him with a generic damage card. And I could be like, well, I have this card that says bless, which is assist another player with any color damage you want. So assist means I can play it out of my turn. So Craig, if you want, I can play that now, and I technically can't show him the card. I just tell him I have it. And he's like, okay. And so I play the card. That does the damage Craig needs. Craig finishes the spider off, and there's the teamwork kicking. All of a sudden, the feeling is I cast Bless on Craig, does what he needs to do, kills the giant spider, right? Which is pretty neat. So you get that feeling of like working together when you're trying to build these combinations to kill these monsters. So you're basically playing your cards. The next thing you do is take damage. So it's still my turn. So any monsters that are in front of me that I haven't managed to kill off, we're just going to look at those total of their red damage blood splotches there, and I'm going to take that much damage. So this giant spider I'm talking about was still in front of me, I'd be taking 2 points of damage. If there's also a gelatinous...
And you don't have that many points.
No, typically the average guy's got like 5 or 6 hit points. Some of the heavy fighter types have 10, but that's rare. So 6 is pretty much what you've got. So you can't go too many rounds, but here's the interesting thing, Craig. So in this intro dungeon crawl level, there's only 3 rounds. So it's a little more solvable than what we were doing last time.
Yes.
But you're right. You're going to feel those 2 hit points of damage really hard. And there's not a lot of healing. There's not a lot of healing at the start of the game. So unless the market flip is pretty good and gives your party some good healing access, it's going to be hard to get that healing. So the next thing, so we've taken our damage, and now we replenish. So what replenish means is if your current cards in your current hand are less than 3, you draw 2, right? Now that's interesting. You always draw 2 if you have less than 3 cards, unless there's special rules involved. So what's neat about that is there isn't really a max hand size, and the hand size, the starting hand size for each character based on their class and race is just a start. After that, you're just getting 2 back if you go in less than 3. After your hand's back, you drew 2 cards if you can get them. Now you go to the market. So now during your turn, you can buy cards from the market. So unlike a lot of deck building games, you're not actually playing cards to buy cards. You've actually got a pile of gold tokens that you started with at the beginning of the game. And whenever you kill a monster, so let's say I had killed that giant spider. That giant spider we were talking about before was 6 gold. So when a monster dies, starting with the players whose turn it was when the monster died, you give 1 gold to that person, and then you can start going around the table until all 6 gold for the spider is dealt out. So in a 2-player game, that's an even amount of gold. In a 3-player game, that's also an even amount. But if the fighter was worth 5 gold, and Craig and I are playing just 2 players, I'm going to get 3 gold if it was my turn. What's kind of funny about that, and it's very explicit in the rules, is if it's my turn and Craig throws an assist to the last point of damage on the spider, I still get the starting pile of gold, which means I still end up with more. So, yeah, whoever's turn it is with the spider. And this actually led to some pretty funny moments with my daughters. So my youngest daughter, for whatever reason, she never actually got the killing blow during her turn on anybody. She was assisting everybody, healing everybody all the time. And by the end of the game, it became hilarious because she was like, I never get any money. You guys suck. So it was pretty funny. So you go to the market. Now, the market is really cool because this is where all the great cards are. And what's interesting about this is you're not going to buy cards. And what I like about this game, too, is unlike other deck builders, when you buy a card, it goes into your discard pile. And now you got to wait until they get the card in your hand at some future time. When you buy a card from the market here, it immediately goes into your hand. That'll be playable your next turn. So whatever you're buying right now is huge. And you're buying stuff that could be a flask of burning oil. It could be a fireball spell. It could be any pretty much anything you see a hero do in combat in D&D. It's in there somewhere. Mystic Step, all that stuff's there. So you're going to buy these things. Now, what's interesting about it is there's not really overt restrictions on. It's not like the fighter class can only buy fighter cards. So I could buy Magic Missile as a fighter, or Craig could buy the Flask of Oil, which is a martial card, as a wizard. But some of these cards do have things on them that make it harder for the non-priority class to buy them. So, for example, it might say to buy this card, you have to play an arcane card this turn. Or sometimes they do explicitly state can only be bought by a bard, which is interesting because bard is not a specific class type. Like bard's a class type. Bard's not an archetype, right? The archetype bard goes under is like rogue. But there are cards that are like bard only, or anybody can use them, but if you're a bard, they get a bonus ability. So there's a lot of cool cards in there that anybody can grab, and it was sort of interesting. There was a couple points where there was a healing spell. We really needed to buy the healing spell, and only the fighter had the money to buy it, but it was better if the druid had it. But we were like, just let the fighter buy it because we need the healing now, and the timing won't work out. If you wait for the druid to get it, she'll die. So there were some tough decisions to make around, do you buy it now, or do you wait for the perfect character to get it? So I really liked how, and it does kind of give you the feeling that you're building a multi-class character, because all of a sudden your fighter's occasionally shooting magic missiles or doing things like that. Craig, what did you think of the fact you could buy out-of-class abilities?
I thought it was neat because you were going to need that in the game, but I thought it was. I think for me, the theme in this game is really you have to force it in there, and so if you're inclined to think of it the way you just described it, then it would totally work that way, and it's cool multi-classing. If you're inclined more to want more guidance and to want more of a pathway that's outlined for you in the game, then you're just going to be like, why is my warrior throwing a fireball? Yeah. So I think it's like it's up to you and your game group and the attitude of the people around the table to really buy into this game, at which point it's really going to shine. And if your game group is more like, more rules as written or fluff as written or whatever, it's more going to be like, okay, so it really does render down into the mechanics of what do you need to take out the next monster, and that's on the surface level. The fluff is really buried very deep to me.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, the moments of joy really are. Like, my oldest daughter was like, watch this, and there was a moment where she really leveled up her spellcaster, and so it was like in one turn, she's like, fireball those 3 guys, lightning bolt those 2 guys, and then I'm going to play this card that lets you go and play a card right now, and like she did this whole thing where she's like wiped out 3 monsters in a turn and literally saved the day, and she was like, man, that was cool. So like there's those moments, but it's almost like, to your point, Craig, it's not emulating. It's just really enjoying working through the mechanics of the game, and in your head you're seeing yourself casting all these lightning bolts, but really it's just getting a really cool combo, right? So but it does it all. If that's the kind of, if you like that sort of mechanic, which my girls do like, I think it really shines. But you're absolutely right. There are parts where you're like, well, the spellcaster should buy this card, but I'm going to grab it because I need it, But it works for us. But I think it's definitely it depends. If you want to be the fighter always swinging your two-handed sword, that game's not going to emulate that. That's just not how it's going to work.
Well, it could, but then you're not going to be able to kill the monsters you need to kill.
Right. So that is that's pretty much your whole turn. So basically, you play your cards, which deals some damage. You're going to take a damage from the monsters you didn't kill. You're going to draw back up in your hand. You're going to go to the market, and then your turn's over. And then now it's the next player's turn. And one more thing about the market: as you buy cards, the market replaces them. And if you choose not to buy a card, you must cycle one. So the market's always at least moving a little bit. So that's the player turn. We're going to keep going around and doing that until, as I mentioned before, the scene ends, which typically means you've killed all the monsters, but there's other triggers for that. And that's pretty much the whole game. A couple of things you should probably know about. One is that in addition to monsters in the encounter deck, sometimes locations pop up. And these are not in the basic intro rules, Craig. But a location is kind of like a specialized monster. So when a location pops up in front of you, you have to put your little character icon on top of the location to indicate you're there. And the location typically has a damage track on it like monsters do. So you're going to have to do damage to escape the location. You got to do the certain right kinds of damage combinations to get out of there. What's interesting is while you're in the location, generally you have some kind of restrictions put upon you. Maybe you can't assist other characters, or other characters can't assist you, or whatever. What's interesting is you can move in and out of locations, but other characters you can never leave a location empty until it's defeated. So essentially what you can do is, like, if the location is dealt to the thief and the thief's stuck in the location, the fighter can, like, I'll get you out, and the fighter can, like, push the thief out of the mud pit. But now the fighter's stuck in the mud pit until he either defeats the mud pit or someone else rescues him and gets stuck in the mud pit. So it's kind of like a little interesting mechanic that way. It's pretty neat. I got to look through all the locations to figure out all the different ones and see how fluffy they are. But the way they're set up now, they're kind of like, it's less like the one sets of you are in a corridor and the other set of you are in a forest. It's more like you guys are all in a forest and one of you managed to fall in a mud pit kind of thing, which is kind of neat.
So is mud pit one of the locations?
Yeah, it was something, I can't remember what it's exactly called. I'll have to find that what it is. But
yeah, that's that like kind of thing.
That kind of thing, yeah.
Or more like terrain than
it's kind of like terrain, more like terrain than location. I'm trying to find a good one right now. Yeah, like cursed ground. So like you're in the cursed area, or choke point is another good example. So if the fluff is you're fighting your way through a castle, some of you are stuck at the choke point, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it's not like, you know what I mean? So that was pretty neat. Then the other thing that can kind of happen is stunned and unconscious. So as we talked about, the players all have hit points. When you take a blow that would take you below 0, you go to what's called the stunned situation. You ignore any excess damage from that hit. You go to stunned, which is basically 0. You've got to shuffle all cards in your discard pile and in your hand back into your deck. You draw 1. And as a stunned player, you only can draw 1 card each turn, and you can't go to the market until you're unstunned. And the only way to get unstunned is to have someone heal you. And if you take damage again while you're stunned, you then go unconscious. And if you're unconscious, you're basically out of the adventure. Now, you're called unconscious and not dead, because if the rest of the party can survive to the end of the adventure, you are considered to have succeeded with the adventure with them, kind of like dragged to the finish line, and you get to continue the campaign. It's just that you didn't make it to the end. And they're typically, after each adventure, the party is awarded experience points, and oftentimes those experience points are augmented depending on if your characters all made it as unconscious or not at the end, right? So basically, unconscious is essentially dead for purposes of you're out of the battle. Stunned is you're really badly disabled, and when you're healed, you still keep the exhaustion token on you. So exhaustion sucks because basically you only ever get to draw 1 card instead of 2. So exhaustion really stinks, but the only way to get unexhausted is to get to that short rest, which is after the end of the scene. So basically, if during a battle, during a scene, you go to stun, but then you're basically healed up a little bit, so you're back to normal, you're still going to be only getting 1 card instead of a 2, so you're going to be kind of like in that stunned state and kind of really needing a break until that short rest. And once you get a short rest, you get rid of that exhaustion token, and now you're back in the battle for the next scene. But if you go unconscious, you're pretty much out into a long rest, and long rests don't happen until the end of the adventure. So don't go unconscious, basically. Keep your guy.
Okay.
Make sense?
Good pointer. Good pointer.
Tip, yeah. Right. So that's pretty much it for the single adventure. The only thing you ought to want to know about is campaign play. So this is where I think the game really shines, and what my girls got excited about was the idea of campaign play. So first of all, I mentioned before, you're going to pick one of those background stickers and stick it on one of your slots on your character sheet right at the very beginning of the game, and that's going to already start personalizing that character and giving them a special ability that no one else has. But what you can then do, though, is that between each adventure, you're going to be awarded experience points, and the experience points are in the back of the oversized adventure card. So, for example, on that one I was talking about earlier, the dungeon crawl one, the XP at the end is awarded for, you get 1 XP for each scene that you started. So every scene that your character starts in is an XP. So there's 3 scenes in this adventure, so you're looking at 3. And if the party beats the entire adventure, then everybody gets 2 XP. So what's kind of neat about this one is you get XP even if you fail, right? So if you get through 2 scenes and you don't complete the whole thing, you get 2 XP, right? And then you can come back and try it again. So it's kind of like you can start leveling your character up. And then your XP then does a couple things. First of all, as you get to certain tiers, that makes you to new levels in the game, and it unlocks new openings on your character's card to be able to put stickers. So the number of stickers you can have on your card at once is influenced by essentially your level. And then the sum of the stickers you pick. So many of the stickers, the background sticker in the beginning of the game just has background on it. But the rest of the stickers in the game have XP numbers on them. Some of them say 10, some of them might say 5, some of them might say 50. And the sum of all the stickers on your card has to be less than your total experience. So you don't really spend experience in this game. You just track your total XP, and your total XP tells you how many slots are open, and also what the sum of all your stickers needs to be. And then in addition to that, you'll also gain some magic items from the magic cards I was telling you about, the cool foil magic cards. You'll get some magic items also based on the adventure, and your character sheet also says by class and race you've chosen how many different magic types you can have. So you might only be able to have, as a cleric, you may be able to have magical armor, but only 1 magical weapon, and a fighter may be able to have 3 magical weapons. So you're going to draw some of these magical cards, but who's going to be able to take advantage of those is going to be depending on their class, right? So that's pretty much it. That's the whole game in a nutshell, Craig. Does it sound better now that you've heard the rest of it?
Yeah, it sounds like a game I wish I had played.
So I'll have to get it. Are you willing to try it one more time with the full version?
Yeah, I would love to try it. Yeah.
All right. So in the style, Craig, of a level 1 overzealous adventurer preparing to take on his first dungeon.
Okay.
Please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
Right. Well, I can't wait to go into this dungeon. It's gonna be great. I'm thinking. I mean, I got my sword and I got my dagger and I got my 50 feet of rope and I have my 10-foot pole and what more do I need? But what if this particular dungeon is more dangerous than I can handle? What if it's really, really dangerous? Well, I mean, I know the Dungeon Adventurers Guild rates every dungeon in the area, but I don't really understand their rating system. So I've come up with something of my own, and it's basically it's the lower the number is, like if I roll those bones like I did in the tavern last night. The likelihood of that dungeon being like a good dungeon is like the more likely that the die is going to roll what I say. So, and I'm going to say like a 3+. So that's a 3, 4, 5, or 6. So that's a 4 in 6 chance that that's going to be a good dungeon. So the lower the number, the better. And I think that is really a system that's going to catch on. I think. What's that noise behind me?
Excellent, Craig. So lower the better. So, Craig, you want to go first, or do you want me to go first on this one?
Yeah, I'll go first because I didn't really play the real game.
There you go.
So with that caveat, I did not play the real game. The game I played wasn't that much fun, but I can see how if you add all this cool stuff in, it would be fun. So I think that's a shame. I think it's a real shame that Quick Start did what it did. And I mean, and again, the Quick Start is probably better than what I experienced, because we read it wrong and we were adding a monster every time we took a turn, and it was just getting ridiculous and crazy. But if I have to go back to why the game is kind of you try to render out the parts that either are quick start or are the parts we got wrong, I think ultimately for me the parts of the game that I experienced was my least favorite part of role playing, which is the table talk during a battle where, okay, so how much damage can you do? Okay, I can do this over here. And I know there are countless gaming groups who battle in that way, and they talk. I mean, that's how your brother and Joe and their game group. That's whenever they went into a battle. That's exactly what happened around the table. Okay, so I've got the fireball, so I'm going to be over here, and I'm going to do that over there. Well, you have to do this thing over here. Well, I'm going to go over here because I do this other thing. And to me, that's not that the narrative gets lost in that table talk, and that's what I mean when I say the mechanics of this game are very strong, I think. But that's a bad thing as well as a good thing, because I think it's very easy to play the mechanics of this game and lose the theme entirely or almost entirely. And it's up to you really to do the heavy lifting on maintaining the theme. So to kill this monster, I need to do this kind of damage, then 2 of these, and then that kind of damage, and then 2 of these, and then 1 of those. And that's what I have to do. And I'm looking at my cards, and that's what I'm putting together, and that's what I'm lining up. But if I squint, I could be, I have to sneak him around, and then I have to distract him with this. And then so I believe someone in the game design team put a really cool story into this game. But it's either buried under the mechanics or it's lost in the mechanics, and I don't really know which. And so it's up to you really to dig it back out again. Now, all the cool campaign stuff, which I didn't get to experience either, that sounds like it would really set the tone and set the mood and really offset that a lot, which is why I want to play the game again. But because of the game I experienced and my own personal feeling about that kind of role-playing, which is just not really where I have fun, I would say I'm going to give now don't gasp.
All right.
I'm gonna give the game a 5+.
Ooh, that's pretty high.
Okay, but wait.
All right.
+1 if you don't mind deck builders.
All right.
Because that's kind of what it is.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, definitely that.
Yep. And +2 if you enjoy deck builders, because I think there's a lot going on here that sort of innovates that genre and really kind of elevates it. So if you enjoy deck builders, I think this is going to be a 3+. And if all of the cool stuff is as cool as Russ says it is, I would say maybe even kick all of those ratings another further +1. So the game I played would be a 5-4-3. The game Russ is describing to me, and I have no reason to doubt him, would be a 4-3-2, if that makes sense. So
all right.
4. So if all that campaign stuff is as cool as it sounds, I would say it's going to be 50% of the gamers who play it are going to like it, unless they are inclined to, they don't mind deck builders, in which case it's going to be 4 out of 6. And if you enjoy deck builders, a group of people who enjoy deck builders are going to enjoy this. 5 out of 6 of them are going to enjoy it, I think. Yeah. If all those cool campaign pieces work and all those moving parts mesh the way they are advertised.
Yeah, okay, well, that's good. I think it's a good rating. So I think, I will say this. So my girls really like this. In fact, they liked it after our quick start game, Craig. I was a little nervous for them. Yep. And I still soldiered on and said, let's try the quick start rules first. And I played it with them correctly by the quick start rules, meaning we did the right thing at the end of each round. And we literally made it to the last 2 monsters before we died in the entire monster deck. So we did pretty well. But my daughters were like, this seems weird. Like they felt like it wasn't quite right. And they read it. And my oldest daughter's like, let me look at the full rules. We got to do. So she immediately was like,
yeah,
okay.
I don't know why you would have the quick start rules force you to fight every monster in the game.
I think
of that level.
Yeah, it's almost like I feel like they should have done the dungeon crawl level 1 as the quick start rules. I get why they didn't include the Dragonfire stuff and that card, And I get, but we also were frustrated by they wanted to pick like some of the other thing about Quick Start Rules, you're supposed to pick only humans, and then you ignore the stats on the card and just pick you kind of set these generic stats. And that also makes it harder, because we talked about this too. Like if I had used the stats of the guy I picked, I'd have had 4 more hit points and we'd have won. So like, I don't know. I would definitely recommend try the Quick Start Rules, but just do like 2 rounds and then stop. That's like learning all the basics of the game, then stop and go play a real adventure with this thing. Because I feel like I did ask my oldest daughter, I said, what got you excited about it? She said, there's no downtime. The game plays, she's like, there's really fast tactical action happening, and she used those words, which I was very proud of. But she also said, she's like, there's no downtime. I'm playing cards, and then, Kit, my sister, she's thinking about stuff, throwing it in there. You're always all in the game, and the game plays really pretty quick. They don't like long games. Like whenever I bring a game out, the very first question they ask is, how long is it? It's just they have no interest in playing a 2-hour game. So like to get them, except for D&D, like D&D 5e, they can play 8 hours straight and they'll think that's too short. So like role playing's fine, but for most games they want in and out in an hour. This game is very fast, which we like. They love the artwork and I love the legacy feel for this. So I like the stickers on the stuff and adding that in the campaign stuff. I do like, one thing I didn't mention is that some of the monsters have tokens on them. So some of the monsters might be like Zombie Swarm or Pack of Kobolds. And for those cards, it has little icons that tell you to put tokens on them. And each token represents an additional kobold. And the tokens are easy to kill, but then the main kobold, who's the card. So once all the tokens are dead, then the main kobold just has that little wound track we talked about earlier. So it's got that feeling of like little monster swarms in it. The monsters feel right, like when you see an Etten or you see a kobold pack or you see a Grell or monsters you just know from, or like a Roper, you're like, ooh, a Roper should be, oh yeah, Ropers are hard. You look at it and go, oh my god, we're going to need magic we're going to need magic to take a Roper out. So like, for me, that all works. It is mechanical heavy, but it's fun. I like it a lot. And we had to work together, and I didn't see players, like none of us became like, okay, here's what we should do, everybody, just explaining to everyone what should happen. So I like it as a co-op. I like it as a deck builder. I do love that I can buy something from the market. It goes right in my hand. I do feel like my deck building is creating a character. So I'm looking forward to really getting into the campaign a little more and putting stickers on stuff and seeing. So listen to Futures Achievements in Gaming. So I'll let you know how far we get in the campaign system. But I think this one is going to be a winner with my girls. So Craig, I'm pretty close to your rating actually. I'm going to say this is a 4+ for the average gamer. Just anybody walking down the street, you play this game with them. I think you're going to get engaged with it, especially 50% of the time, especially with the campaign system and stuff. If they've got the time to get involved with the same group of guys playing over and over again, or gals. But I do think if you're a fan of D&D in particular, and you're always looking for ways to dip your toe into the D&D world, +1. So this is a 3+, possibly a 2+ for a hardcore D&D fan, because there's a lot to like here. The only thing I can't wait for is I think we need a few more market cards to add a little more variety to the market, because I do think if you're playing campaign and constantly going to that market for game after game, you're going to want a few more crazy magic spells. You're going to want a few more class-specific things. And so I'm looking forward to future expansions. The first expansion's got a lot more classes and a lot more races, which is awesome, and really gives you a lot more replayability because as you sticker stuff up, the expansion comes with more stickers too, even of the base stickers. So it is really you can play more of the base game, even though you're kind of, I don't say ruining, but permanently altering characters as you go through it. But I'm looking forward to the first expansion that adds more monsters, more encounter decks, and more of those things in the market. So there you have it. That's our rating of Dragonfire. I think it's a solid choice, and I hope you guys check it out. Let us know what you think, and keep an eye on to Achievements in Gaming, and we'll tell you more about how the adventure's here. And I'll try to get to Craig with at least more time to the table with this thing so we can see it for real. For realsies, right, Craig?
Cool.
This Jebber Notice is brought to you by all of our friends over at Patreon that help us keep the lights on. Today, I would like to thank Dylan Bright, Brent Brown, Andrew Brown, Paul Buddha, and Chris Casinino. Chris, you know who you are. Casinino. I'm going to guess Casinino. Did you ever notice how badly some people want to win games? It never ceases to amaze me. Now, first of all, I like winning. I don't like losing. I get really annoyed when I lose a lot. But, seriously, there are lines, right? And most people won't cross those lines. But occasionally, you will run into people who cross those lines. And it's very confusing to me. Locally, of course, we've had over the years, you can't game with as many people as we've gamed with and not meet people who cross those lines. And I'm not even talking about outright cheating, although it does graze into that, I think. But just all kinds of just strange things that may or may not be, all on the up and up. The most common, in my experience, is the person who doesn't know how to measure in a miniatures game. That you place the measuring tape down, and if it's 6 inches, you move the model so that it's behind the 6 inch or behind the 1 inch mark. If you see what I'm saying, if you go from behind the full length of the 6 inches to in front of the full length of the 6 inches, you just got the width of your base beyond 6 inches of movement, which could matter a lot in the final, reckoning of the game. And that's probably an innocent mistake. But what about the person who floats their measuring tape as they're moving? So it just kind of like moves with them, and they can get 3 or 4 extra inches out of a movement like that. That's in 2 different categories to me. One is outright cheating. Actually, let's say 3. One is cheating. One is just innocently doesn't know how to use a measuring tape again. And then the third, which is the hardest to pin down, is the person who honestly doesn't know what they're doing, but they're just, they're in their head, there's just a way that this game's gonna run out, and this is how it should be. And that's the most difficult. I mean, you can call them on it, but how do you, after it's happened, there's no tape to re-roll, So that's always been a little iffy with me, and I'm always uncomfortable in a game calling out a person who's doing something like that. Usually I'll just say, oh, okay, well, you know what? Try to gauge the rest of the game. If this is something that's, happening in isolation, that's one thing. If there's other warning triggers, then maybe I don't play this person again. But they're obviously that's one basic example. Recently, I watched just a horrific game that included several other elements that I had never seen before. The most interesting to me was that first of all, using a giant collection of much smaller than usual dice, right? Usually, you've got the dice that come 36 to a cube, or the dice that come 12 to a cube. These were smaller than those smaller dice. And every 2 had an extra mark on it, kind of where, that you might think it's a 3. And quite often, it was being read as a 3. Until somebody finally said, can I see those dice? Like, are you counting this as a 3? Oh, no, that's a 2. I counted that as a 2. And you were watching going, so that person, that's not happening by accident, right? Or, way back when we first all started playing together, there was a guy who played, and he had all of his models, and none of them had arms. And there was just little paper slips about where all the special and heavy weapons were. And I swear, and actually everybody swears, it was just something that everybody knew, those slips of paper would be constantly moving as he moved models. So wherever he needed those weapons, they were where they needed to be, or this guy here's, this happens when you're playing somebody who's not playing, what you see is what you get. So the models have exactly what they're supposed to have. The guy who has the special hand-to-hand weapon always happens to be exactly where he needs to be. That, again, maybe just bad management, maybe cheating, and you don't know. It's just really, really weird. But when it happens over and over again, or for instance, so this is the most insidious, right? The person who pretends they don't know how to play the game, and they're a newbie, and, you know, oh, I don't know what's going on, and, you know, oh, I'm just here to have fun. That's, to me, as the person who's like all about the stories and the fluff and everything, that's like when they get in all the fluff, but that's like a layer of like spread on top of their gameplay, which is all these very questionable things. There's one story locally of a guy who used a regular deck of cards instead of not even a regular deck of cards in Malifaux. Instead of using a Malifaux deck of cards, he used his own deck of cards that he had found that didn't have hearts and spades and diamonds and everything. It actually had its own strange, unique 4 suits, and those suits would float to the point where they were whatever he needed them to be in any given moment, and he would wait to lock it down until you called him on it, or until you like knew from reputation that you needed to set that up at the beginning. But if somebody new was playing him, he wouldn't really talk about it until he needed something desperately, and then he would nail it down and then stick with it. But that, coupled with a bunch of other stuff, got him eventually removed from that league. And that's another level, like when you get that, when so desperate to win that you're removed from a league, like that ought to be a wake-up call. And then, but instead, this guy, I think, from stories, I'm not involved with any of that stuff, but I'm friends with all the people who are running all these different leagues and clubs, and he just shifted game systems and was just doing different things in different games. And it can't be, if winning these miniatures games is that important to you, then something has gone horribly wrong in your life. And there's got to be a sense, like how much of a sense of accomplishment can there be when you're going to these lengths to win these little army men games? It can't be healthy. It's got to be. I mean, everybody's, every now and then going, oh, I don't remember. Oh, I'm going to take the memory that, best suits me at this moment or whatever. But to constantly do this sort of thing, or as I was saying earlier, I'm new at this, I don't know, and taking all these special abilities with all these guys. Oh, I think this guy can do this. Oh, I think that guy could do that, until someone comes over and goes like, oh, actually, I also play that team or that army or whatever, and that's not how that works. Oh, I don't know, I'm just beginner. But then when you do something with your team, he's like, oh, that guy doesn't do that. Like there's as an actor, you've got to be like, dude, you got to commit to your role. And if your role is a newbie, then you can't know all of my stuff and then not know your stuff unless that's part of your backstory, right? So at least, get some actor training. But anyway, yeah, it's whenever I encounter something like that, I'm just in awe, because I don't know what satisfaction you can have, like winning that way. And it just confuses me. And I guess I'm just confused. And I would say, if this sounds familiar, seek help, because something has gone wrong. And life can be a better place than doing these things to win these little games that don't really or shouldn't really matter that much in the long run. And that's coming from a guy who it bothers a lot more than it should that he loses. And I lose a lot. I got a lot of experience, a lot of practice. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that tonight. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
for the front of the show.
You mean Tableware?
Perfect. All right, I'll get that in just a second. All right, I'm going to record that. I'm going to give you a countdown from 5, and then I want you to yell Tableware. Ready? Doug.
Okay.
Doug up front in 5, 4, 3. Anytime now. I forgot to tell you, I paused for the last 2 seconds. I leave that out so you can imagine I'm saying them, but there's a nice little blank point in the recording.
Oh, okay. All right, let's try it again.
We'll try that again. Okay, take 2.
Little important information left out.
Did not. Forgot to describe that little bit. All right, here we go again. All right.
I will count to 0 for 5.
But I shall skip the last 2. All right, here we go.
But I will.
Okay. Right. Just to make things tricky. All right, here we go. Doug up front in 5, 4, 3.
Tableware.